Tremor right there. Try to go to the Senate race here just real quickly here. This is Marco Rubio and Val Demings. 25% of the vote is in. Back to Miami-Dade we go. A moment ago this was blue. Now it's red. 2/3 of the estimated vote is counted, and Rubio leads Demings as well. Watch the percentage here on Rubio and Demings, and I'll go back to the governor's race and see how they well, okay. Right? I mean, it's almost a mirror of itself, 53.6. And then on the Senate side, you've got Rubio at 53.0. If this holds up, guys, major story in the Sunshine State tonight.
One more question. The Florida 27, the Salazar race, can you get there?
Yes, I sure can here. Maria Salazar ran for her first key races over here. Remember, second panel here on Florida. Maria Salazar ran in 2018. She lost. She ran in 2020. She won. Cuban-American, running for re-election again. The guys, this is pretty handily here. This is 78% of the estimated vote, and Salazar is well ahead now by 11 points in her district. That Florida 27 right down here in Miami. A lot of Democrats live here. A lot of blue votes out there. A lot of Cuban-Americans voting in that election as well. So all three of those are, as we say, on the clock as of now. Martha?
Hey, that's great. Very interesting, Bill. We just have a few seconds here. But Carl, when you look at Miami-Dade, I think it's about 70% Hispanic vote. Isn't that right?
Yeah, right. And the last time a Republican carried Miami-Dade was Jeb Bush in his 2002 re-election, where he was carrying everything. This is a really remarkable story here tonight. The transition of this historically Democratic county in the southern part of the state is part of a broader story about Florida. Think about this. In the last 4 years, they have added 600,000 new registered Republicans to the rolls in Florida and 27,000 Democrats. So we're now at the first time that the Republicans have ever outnumbered Democrats in registration.
Well, Florida has changed so dramatically in the past couple of years, right? And so we'll see whether or not this is reflective of other trends across the country or whether this is a Florida story that we're watching play out.
Either way, it bodes well for 2024 for Republicans.
And we've got this brewing competition now between Mr. Trump and Governor DeSantis, which has been, obvious in the last couple of days. If it's a big night for DeSantis and his running mates in Florida, that would sharpen that competition a bit, give Mr. Trump something to think about.
Yes, it would. And we're going to focus on 2022. But you're right.
But that's a story to watch. There's no doubt about it.
We got a long time.
It's out there.
Britt's got a twinkle in his journalist eye right there.
Coming up, Lawrence Jones is in Battleground, Georgia, talking to voters about what matters most to them.
Plus, Jesse Waters joins us next as Democracy 2022 election night rolls on, folks. We'll be right back.
Commanding officer called you one of the best pilots he's ever seen. It must be hard being the
naval aviator. It's the toughest job there is.
Based on the incredible true story.
Can't tell you how many times people have told me to give up, quit.
Of an American hero.
If I did, I wouldn't be here.
Just remember you belong down here with us too, okay?
This is war. We bring everyone home.
Show off.
Devotion.
That was pretty good. It's good.
In theaters, November 23rd, PG-13.
As we get older, our body starts to deteriorate. The only way you can keep it fresh is to rejuvenate it, but you can't eat enough fruits and vegetables. I believe balance in nature works because I've seen it work. There has been a change in my workouts, so I recommend it for everybody. I don't care what your age is, because sooner or later you're going to get older. And you want to keep going, take balance in nature, because that's what I'm going to do. I'll take it forever.
Start now by going to balanceofnature.com and don't forget to use discount code FOX News.
Dry skin is sensitive skin too, and it's natural. Treat it that way with Aveeno Daily Moisture. Formulated with nourishing prebiotic oat, it's clinically proven to moisturize dry skin for 24 hours. Aveeno.
But all you got was ham? And all you got was turkey?
With gravy.
That's an all-you-can-eat holiday buffet. A smorgasbord of all you want, all you need. Did I sit at the wrong table?
With thyroid eye disease, I hid from the camera, and I wanted to hide from the world. For years, I thought my TED was beyond help. But then, I asked my doctor about Tepezza.
Tepezza is the only medicine that treats TED at the source, not just the symptoms. In a clinical study, more than 8 out of 10 patients taking Tepezza had less eye bulging. Tepezza is an infusion. Patients taking Tepezza may have infusion reactions. Tell your doctor right away if you experience high blood pressure, fast heartbeat, shortness of breath, or muscle pain. Before getting Tepezza, tell your doctor if you have diabetes, IBD, or are pregnant or planning to become pregnant. Tepezza may raise blood sugar even if you don't have diabetes and may worsen IBD such as Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis.
Now, I'm ready to be seen again.
Visit mytepezza.com to find a TED eye specialist and to see Bridget's before and after photos.
So we're about 7 minutes away from the next poll closings at 7:30 Eastern time, and we're still watching the vote count as it comes through in Georgia. You can see it scrolling along the bottom of your screen. So let's head to Alpharetta in the Central City Tavern, where Lawrence Jones is hanging out tonight. Hi, Lawrence.
Hey, good evening, my friend. The reason why we're here is because this was a place where the residents of Alpharetta hung out during the pandemic because they were shut down for about 4 weeks. But the reason why I mentioned that is because when you ask the voters, why is it not tight in the governor's race and it's tight in the Senate race, they say that they know Brian Kemp and he kept them open. He was business friendly. So let's talk with some of the voters on why they're voting for their candidate. How you doing, ma'am? So why are you supporting the current governor as well as Herschel Walker?
Supporting the current governor because he kept the state open during COVID. I have a lot of family in New York. Big difference, so I appreciate that he kept us open and kept the businesses open.
So why is the race so tight between Raphael Warnock as well as Herschel Walker, but it seems like the governor is just surging along?
I think that Herschel does not have the name recognition, at least politically. Football-wise, he does. I don't know about politically, but I hope he can pull it off.
Yes, ma'am. Sir, what's the number one issue for the folks of Georgia?
I'd have to say it's inflation and the economy. Everything else kind of feeds off that. So for us, that was a big part of it.
And who are you going to support in the Senate race as well as the governor's race?
Going to give it to Kemp because, like she said, he kept our state open. He's very pro-business. Cut the gas tax, so he's done a lot of positive things. Herschel kind of is saying along the same lines, the same kind of business idea, so we're going to kind of go for him too.
Thank you. Ma'am, real quick, who did you vote for today?
Herschel and Kemp.
And the reason why?
Economy, inflation.
Wow. Thank you so much. So guys, as you recognize, as we see in our national polling, it is the same thing in Georgia. It is not about Jim Crow 2.0. It is about the economy. Record turnout here in Georgia. I send it back to you guys in New York.
All right, Lawrence, thank you so much. I just want to point out one thing. The RNC is joining a coalition to file an emergency motion to extend poll hours in Maricopa County because of the earlier problems with the voting machines. We should point out Maricopa says that they've fixed them by now, but they say that hiccup, they want to extend the hours, and they've got a bunch of attorneys and volunteers on the ground working on this. We'll follow that to see if they do it. Joining us now, the man who usually sits here at 7 p.m., Jesse Waters, host of Jesse Waters Prime Time, co-host of The Five. We should point out that these chairs are a little higher. You are taller than me.
Thank you.
Okay.
I was lowered by someone, and I'm not okay with that.
I wanted to make sure you...
Okay, thank you.
What do you think, this election then?
Well, all I have are anecdotes, and they're positive anecdotes. And I saw Miami-Dade go red, and that's a pretty big deal. I think that's a pretty big deal. And Hemmer told me that if you get 2 of the 3 of the Virginia House races go Republican, we're looking at a wave. And if you get 3 of the 3 Republican, you're looking at a tsunami. So we're looking at that. And despite the Maricopa County shenanigans or incompetence, we don't know what it is at this point, I'm still hearing positive things about Republican turnout there. And I'm hearing very positive anecdotes from Nevada. Am I saying that correctly, Mr. Rove, Nevada? I think I am.
Yes.
So I had predicted on the 5 and on Jesse Waters Prime Time 53, maybe 54 if Republicans get New Hampshire. You know, Rove was a little bit more, it's kind of a bedwetter, they call him, so he was only saying 51. But the anecdotes that I'm seeing and the early data shows me that we're looking at 53, possible 54 in the Senate, and maybe get up to as high as 240 plus House seats.
We don't really need any of this data. You're here. We have nothing to...
I mean, do we have anything else? What else do we have, Hemmer?
So here's a little piece of information from Nevada. which is how we say it. Governor Sisolak's office just announced the early closure of state offices in northern Nevada because of weather, and the state GOP is crying foul on this with a statement below, concerned about him taking that action because of this snowstorm. They say it's not snowing that badly, and this is not required.
It's not as if they don't have snow in northern Nevada, for God's sake.
Handle it.
Shut it off.
We could all see this coming, except for a few people who didn't see it coming. And then I think tomorrow the president's going to have to say something. He's going to have to come to the cameras and admit maybe something went wrong, and we'll see if he can own up to it. I doubt he will, though.
Jesse, what do you think about New York? You're a New Yorker now, live not too far from here. What do you expect to happen?
Well, I'm actually moving to New Jersey, so but I did vote today, and it's a toss-up. Crime's the dominant issue. I saw a lot of Lee Zeldin signs in Long Island. That's his stronghold. But I was recognized a few times in my deep blue Manhattan polling precinct, so I consider that an also positive anecdote. But Kathy is a lackluster candidate who just whiffs on crime and points fingers. And if we could get a Republican in the governor's seat in Albany here in New York, you could really turn the city and the state around.
Hey, Juan, why is the president not committing to a press conference tomorrow?
Well, I imagine that he has to say something. I mean, you know what the language, Brett, is in the past has been, this, I took a whooping, I was devastated, whatever that you want to use in terms of a very active description. But I think the president has to, given what we've talked about in terms of results, get a sense of what it means not only for himself and whether he runs in 24. I don't want to get scolded like Britt Hume for looking too far forward.
No, I wasn't scolding him. I was just saying.
But I also think for Democrats in the House, for Pelosi's future, for what happens in the Senate, I think a lot of pieces are dynamic here, and I think the president wants to get a hold of it. One of the interesting things we can see out of the Fox data is, even though there's a high percentage of people still disapproving of the president, people aren't necessarily voting in that way. They're voting for Democrats even though they might disapprove of the president.
It's really nice to have this ticker because you have to wrap the comment. Okay. It is now 7:30 here on East Coast. Polls are now closed in 3 more states, including the pivotal state of Ohio. In Ohio, the Fox News Decision Desk says GOP candidate J.D. Vance has a slight lead, but the race is too early to call. He's up against Democratic House Rep Tim Ryan.
Let's go to North Carolina. Also too early to call this one in the race between Republican Ted Budd and Democrat Sherry Beasley. They are locked in a tight race there as well.
Moving to the governor's races and again to Ohio, we can project that Republican incumbent Mike DeWine will easily win a second term, defeating Nan Whaley.
It's interesting when you look at that governor's race in Ohio. He's running away with it, DeWine, and then when you look at the Senate race, it's super tight. Kellyanne, do you have a thought on that?
Well, sure. It's a state that Trump won twice by 8 points. But I think Mike DeWine, like these other incumbent governors who are getting reelected, you're calling these races early, they're seen as being competent. I still think that even though the Democrats counted on this election, Martha, as being the first post-Roe, post-pandemic, post-January 6th election, all in their favor, at the end of the day, this election is what it's always about. Do I have confidence in the competence of the people who are running the country? Right now, they know there's single-party rule in Washington. They're against that. And I think in Ohio, you see Governor DeWine having fended off a challenge from the right, a former congressman in the primaries, and having convinced Ohio voters that they should stick with him because he has been competent. I want to just go back to something that Jesse and Juan were touching on. I'm just astonished that when Bill Clinton and Barack Obama as presidents suffered grievous midterm losses, they at least died on a hill that they believed in. For Obama, it was, for President Obama, it was the Affordable Care Act. It was Obamacare. He believed in that. He lost all those seats in 2010. He lost seats again in 2014 on health care. For Bill Clinton, it was a big stimulus package and some moves to the left. There's no hill that Joe Biden is dying on this time as president that he took to the mat, that he said it's worth us losing 1 or 2 chambers because we did this. If anything, they passed things like the Inflation Reduction Act on a straight party vote. They did build back better. They spent trillions of dollars of money we don't have on things we don't need and didn't ask for. And yet, he's going to go down and lose press conference or no press conference, Juan. He should come out for no good reason. It's really remarkable when you compare him to past recent Democratic presidents.
Yeah, we're getting word that he is now going to make a statement. We don't know if he's going to take questions at the White House. Bill Hemmer, What do you got for us?
Hey guys, got a lot going on here because things are really starting to roll in. Let me just take you through the map and try and tell you a story about what we think is developing. I want to start in Georgia because we're just starting to notice a bit of a trend here. Now, listen, it's early. Remember, in Georgia, you need 50%. If you don't get to 50%, there's a runoff 4 weeks from now on the 12th of December. This is about 11% of the vote in. Warnock's ticking about 60% of the vote so far. Based on the early returns, okay? You see Walker around 38.7. But let me show you the governor's race now, and just look at the percentages now between the two, because this could be significant throughout the night, okay? So Kemp's at 42.5 roughly. Let me go back to the Senate race, and you see Herschel Walker at 38. This seems to be for the past, I would say, just listen, it's early. But for the past 30 minutes or so, we seem to see Walker trailing Kemp's margin by about 4 or 4.5 points. So we'll watch that through the night as to whether or not there's some sort of pattern that we're picking up on there. You know, there's a lot of talk that Kemp could get above 50% and Walker would not. And we'll see whether or not that's the case as develops. A few other places up here. I want to go to New Hampshire because this first numbers we're seeing now, Maggie Hassan, the Democrat. Now remember, a couple months ago, Republicans thought she was the easiest pick-off of the entire map. But it did not shape up that way. And Don Bolduc, the general, got in the race. He's been doing a ton of town halls all throughout the state. Polls in the last couple of weeks suggest that he's pulling close and that race is getting tight. Right now, it's early. It's early, only 5% of the vote coming in. And we talked to Bolduc this week, and he was thinking about what we talked to the governor, Sununu, this week, and he was suggesting that down here around Rockingham County that Bolduc is going to pick up some of the vote. He might be right about that, but right now it's not showing up. And again, it's just early. Just want to check in on that. Let me go to my home state. Can we now? Let's go to Buckeye State in Ohio. You guys mentioned the governor, Mike DeWine. What's interesting about DeWine, let me click this up here, is that when COVID broke out, you know, DeWine really, he locked down the state. He was one of the more forward-thinking governors in the entire country. And you saw what everybody else did in turn. And there was a time there where DeWine was on his back. You know, he was around the upper 30s, low 40s across the entire state. He made a heck of a comeback because he's a winner tonight in the state of Ohio. Let me check in on the Senate race right now here. All right, sorry, guys, you're at 0%. So between Tim Ryan and J.D. Vance right now, not a ton to talk about. Let me pop down to Florida, because we're watching this. This is another really good example, okay? So statewide, Rubio is just under 53%. Now watch this in a moment here. I haven't seen this in a couple minutes. So you're 57% of the estimated vote in. The governor's race here is, okay, so DeSantis at 54.4, back to the Senate. They seem to be running a lot closer than Georgia for sure, but about a point off right there in Florida statewide. But at the county level, this is one of these things that we've been watching, right? You know, what's Miami-Dade going to do? Well, I mean, right now, they are going red in a significant way. This is a little more interesting than the rest of the state, only because Rubio's percentage is very close to where DeSantis is right now in Miami-Dade. And so far, that is holding up in southeastern Florida. One state we haven't checked in on right now, that's the Senate race in North Carolina. Let's see what Ted Budd is doing against Cheri Beasley. Okay, so Ted Budd was a congressman. He left Congressional District 13, taking on Cheri Beasley, who used to be the head of the state Supreme Court. About a little more than 27% of the vote in, and Ted Budd is trailing Beasley. So let's see where the vote is now. As you check this out, okay, this is Mecklenburg County, that's Charlotte. We would expect Beasley to do well here, just a tick below 70% so far, with not quite half the vote reporting from that county. This is Raleigh here, this is Wake County. Beasley, pretty similar number on a percentage basis, almost 2-1 over Ted Budd. Budd's gonna really have to fill in this map right here in the rural area of North Carolina, and we'll see how he does that. There is an interesting House race, however, in here in North Carolina. We've been watching. Republicans think they can. I haven't looked at it yet. This is Ted Budd's old seat. Remember about an hour ago we talked about redrawing the lines based on the census? This is a really good example. What Republicans did in North Carolina, they took Budd's old seat west of Raleigh and moved it right underneath the southern part here on the Research Triangle. And so here is your matchup. Wiley Nickel, the Democrat, up against Bo Hines, former football player. Nickel has a clear lead right now with 33% of the vote coming in. Republicans were big on Hines, so we'll see whether or not that vote total stacks up or continues to go that way in North Carolina. So listen, guys, We could spend hours here,
Yes.
okay? We
All right,
probably will.
One more second. Can
Yes,
you just
yeah,
dip
man.
into that Virginia? Is there any
Virginia,
auto-
you want
House races.
house races here? Okay, let's go down to Norfolk, because this is the one they thought they could flip the easiest. Well, here's your change. Now, it's early, Brett, 15%, but Kiggins has a clear lead right now on Elaine Luria. This part of Virginia is fascinating. Just about a year ago, I'm going to get these numbers right here, okay? Just about a year ago, in this same part of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin comes in and rolls through the state. This was a year after Biden was in the White House. Glenn Youngkin took District 2 and swung at a total of 14 points in his direction, and he won this area. Similar to Congressional District 7, right? This is Spanberger's seat running against Yesli Vega. Again, it's still too early here. Different part of the state. But this was a part of Virginia that Youngkin swung by 13 points. 12 months now we're talking about. You know, Biden goes in, takes it by 6 in this area. Youngkin flips it the other way to 7 points in a different direction now. And it's a whole different ball game, Republicans believe, in this part of Virginia. Remember what they said from the beginning. This is your bellwether for majority in the House. This is the question about whether or not there's a red wave. And this is the question as to how high that wave could or could not be. It's early.
It's early. It's early. Yeah. Hey, Brett, what about these governors? They're winning with big spreads. DeWine we call with, very little.
So,
it's competence, right?
Yes, and it affects the Senate races. And in Georgia, for example, Brian Kemp he's going to win, it looks like. Pretty confident about that. Will he win and pull Herschel Walker over the finish line? Herschel Walker's running behind him in the early information that we have. So these governor races count as for themselves, but they're also in some places critical to the fortunes of some of these other candidates.
New Hampshire's another one with Sununu.
Right, Sununu's very popular, very popular, more and more prominent. They wanted him to run, you may recall. The Republican Party wanted him to run. He declined to do it, stayed where he is, and we end up with Bolduc, who is, by the way, one among several of these candidates who are the Trump-backed candidates. And how they do will have an effect on things going forward. But I won't get ahead of you.
I liked it. I liked it.
Can I mention one thing about the governors?
Yeah. Quickly.
Because in Oregon and New Mexico, you might see flips there, partly because of also competence. You have Drazen, who is challenging Brown there in Oregon, and Mark Ronchetti could challenge Lujan Grisham, in New Mexico. Those two would be a flip. But I do think that's also because those states are doing so poorly in so many areas that matter: crime, education, energy, border,
and inflation.
Yes,
and it's a good. There's also the ticket splitting question that we're watching really closely in Georgia, and whether or not people make one choice at the governor's level and another at the Senate level. So all of that to come, and we're also going to get a look at our Fox News voter analysis, plus Maria Bartiromo on what happens tonight and how it could impact the markets tomorrow and in the days after that.
We measure every decision against what is good for the ranch. I'm sworn to protect this family. I'm not seeking goodwill. I'm seeking the end of the invasion on my land.
Yellowstone. Check your local listing.
What is progress? Progress is investing in the future. It is connecting the world. It is feeling at home in a global community. Progress is creating the environment to make opportunities possible. Qatar. Exciting opportunities await.
Wake up to the latest election results. Steve Ainsley and Brian are breaking down the numbers with critical analysis on what it could all mean for the balance of power. Tomorrow on Fox and Friends.
We planned well for retirement, but I wish we had more cash.
Do you think those two have any idea that they can sell their life insurance policy for cash, so they're basically sitting on a gold mine? I don't think they have a clue. That's crazy. Well, not everyone knows Coventry has helped thousands of people sell their policies for cash, even term policies. I can't believe they're just sitting up there. sitting on all this cash.
If you own a life insurance policy of $100,000 or more, you can sell all or part of it to Coventry, even a term policy, for cash or a combination of cash and coverage with no future premiums.
Someone needs to tell them that they're sitting on a gold mine and you have no idea. Hey guys, you're sitting on a gold mine. Come on,
Do you hear that?
I don't hear anything anymore.
Find out if you're sitting on a gold mine. Call Coventry Direct today at 800-798-6200 or visit coventrydirect.com.
Why do nearly 1 million businesses choose Stamps.com to mail and ship? Stamps.com is convenient. You get the services of the post office right on your computer. Stamps.com saves you money with great rates from USPS and UPS. Mail letters, ship packages, anytime, anywhere, for less. A lot less. Get our special TV offer, a 4-week trial plus postage and a digital scale. Go to stamps.com/try and get started today.
Polls set to close in Pennsylvania. There's the countdown clock, 16 minutes and change to go in the Keystone State tonight in what's probably the most watched Senate race of the entire midterms. Dr. Oz versus John Fetterman. Rich Edson joins us live at Fetterman's campaign headquarters tonight. Hi, Rich.
Hey, good evening, Martha. You know, one of the candidates here, John Fetterman, he's about 10 miles from here, still at home in Braddock, Pennsylvania. That's where he's from. That's where he's mayor. It's where he lives. And so he's not quite at this event tonight. He'll come here after the polls close at 8 p.m. Campaign tells us one of the counties they're really looking at here is Erie County, Pennsylvania. That's in the northwest corner of the state as a bellwether as to how things are going to unfold once they start to get some of these returns to come in and once that information begins to get public here. It's going to be a bit of a mess. At least that's what a number of election officials have been telling us statewide. There are 67 counties in Pennsylvania. They all have a little bit different way of counting ballots, and since 2020, when they went to a massive mail-in voting system, all have been doing and counting that in different procedures, and a little bit of that is coming out right now. Here in Allegheny County, officials tell us they had 155,000 mail-in votes come in. They managed to count all of them by 3 p.m. They have been out, I think, another outstanding 1,000 or so that they're going to work through counting and processing through the rest of the evening. That's the picture there. There is Luzerne County. They had a bit of a printing issue. They ran out of paper there, so that's the only county where they're going to have polls close at 10 p.m. tonight as opposed to 8 p.m. for the rest of the state. Big news here from the Fetterman campaign is that they sued a couple of days ago when it came to ballots and writing the date on the back of them. State law says when you sign in your mail-in ballot, you got to put the date on it. The Supreme Court sided with Republicans who sued and said you got to throw those ballots out. The Fetterman campaign is saying you got to count them. Back to you, Martha.
All right, Rich, thank you very much. We'll be back there throughout the night.
Shannon Bream has been tracking our Fox News voter analysis. You have the latest, Shannon.
Okay, Brett, Martha, here we go. Midterm elections, and guess what? Voters are unhappy when they are asked about how they think the federal government is doing. Our Fox News voter analysis finds 3/4 are dissatisfied or downright angry at the way the federal government is working. So let's dig into this. This heat map tells us where those colors are most intense. That's where people are strongest in feeling this way. The sentiment is strongest in the Rocky Mountain and Northern Plains states. Wyoming, by the way, lodges the highest rate of disapproval with the federal government. 87% of people there say they're very unhappy, and that could be bad for incumbents for the White House for Democrats tonight. Now, in Georgia, one of those incumbents, Democrat Senator Raphael Warnock, is fighting for re-election, facing Trump-backed football legend Herschel Walker. Voters there say the balance of power in Washington, specifically how it's going to settle in the Senate, will actually shape their vote. More than half say it is the single most important thing that they're considering when casting a ballot. Now, among that particular group, folks are splitting their votes between the two candidates, so no advantage there. But Georgia is not the only state where people are on the lookout for that Senate seat, hoping to make a turnover and get rid of the incumbent, at least Republicans there. Now, in North Carolina, there's a competitive race for the seat that is about to be vacated by retiring GOP Senator Richard Burr. Democrat Sherry Beasley is challenging another Trump-backed candidate, Republican Ted Budd. Nearly 6 in 10 in the Tar Heel state, they've got a negative opinion of President Biden. Now, President Trump fares better there. Will that be enough to help Budd? Keep in mind, nearly 6 in 10 give Democratic Governor Roy Cooper a thumbs up on the job that he's doing. Will that help Beasley? We got a whole lot more data to crunch. It's all filtering in. But for now, Brett and Martha, back to you.
Thank you very much, Shannon. So why is everyone so unhappy in Wyoming, Dana?
Well, when Shannon said that, so of course, that's where my family homesteaded in the late 1800s. And except for maybe that moment during the Homestead Act, I think that Wyoming's probably been at 85, 90% unhappy with the federal government since the beginning. That number doesn't surprise me at all. But they certainly would love for the federal government to give them a little bit more credit for being able to handle the issues. They like a lot of independence there.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Let's bring in Maria Bartiromo. Maria, good evening. Your thoughts on this night and the possible impact all of this has when you're talking about the economy?
Well, it's a big impact, Brett and Martha. Good to see you. Right now, what I'm watching is the energy-producing states. I think investors are anticipating a big change should we get this red wave that so many people have been talking about. And so you want to really look at Texas, Wyoming, Pennsylvania, Louisiana, West Virginia, Oklahoma. These are the leading energy-producing states, and it is largely energy policy that will change or at least get slowed down. The Biden climate change agenda slowed down should we see a big GOP win, because it is all about inflation. I would say the root cause of inflation is the COVID-19 relief package passed into law back in March of 2021. So all of that spending, beginning with that March of 2021 package and the other packages that we've seen, has created $5 trillion in borrowing. But it is this climate change agenda that the Biden administration is pushing so aggressively that the Republicans will likely want to change. Republicans will change that energy agenda, especially when it comes to clean energy. They will push back on the climate change agenda. And so that's really where I'm focused tonight. I should point out that the price of oil has skyrocketed since President Biden started selling oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. We're talking about oil now back up to the $90 a barrel level, even though gasoline prices are above where they were when Joe Biden took office. Of course, they are lower in the last year, but still elevated. So it is all about inflation. Another issue that investors are watching with regard to the economy is rent. Those essential items, food, fuel, and energy, food, fuel, and rent are the really main issues that have been a problem for American families. Rent has not stopped rising, so we continue to see rent as a major issue. Food prices off of their highs, although you're still talking about, for example, a dozen eggs up 30% in price year over year. So the issue is inflation. Within inflation, I'm looking at energy, and tonight investors will want to see real success from the GOP in those energy-producing states to feel that we will see a change. That's going to be one of the main issues that Republicans take on. Also, of course, fiscal spending. I mentioned the COVID relief package and all of the other spending, $5 trillion in borrowing. If the Republicans can get a victory in a number of these states, we will likely see fiscal spending slow down. And that is also something that investors will be focused on tomorrow. I will say this. If we see a big win by the GOP, expect a big rally in stocks tomorrow. The next big catalyst for markets and the economy comes Thursday when we get the next consumer price index out. That's going to be for the last month, the month of October. And even though we are off of the highs, when you look at the last several months, you're still talking about expectations of between 8 and 9% increases in consumer prices over the last year over year.
Let me just say that if you were listening to Maria 2016, late in the night, you made a lot of money. You made a lot of money. So quickly, Maria, does the market like divided government?
The market does like divided government, and that's what we're likely to see if, in fact, this pans out. If the Republicans are in charge of the House and Senate and the Democrats are in charge of the White House, what does that mean? It means not a lot gets done. And investors like that. They don't want to see higher taxes. They certainly don't want to see $80 billion going to the IRS to hire 87,000 IRS agents. That's something that Kevin McCarthy has been talking about a lot. That's one of his priorities, to overturn if In fact, we see him take the gavel. And so that, along with taxes, if the GOP wins again in a big way tonight, you don't expect tax increases for the next 2 years at least. So that's another thing that markets will celebrate. I would expect a pretty good day in the markets if the GOP has a good night tonight.
All right, Maria, as always, thank you.
You know, it's so interesting when the president used an opportunity to say no more drilling just the other day, right? It felt like it was sort of a tin ear with the moment that we're in. It reminded me of when Hillary Clinton sat around the table with the coal miners and they wanted to know what was up.
Yeah.
You know, why are you doing this to us? And I would imagine that there's some potential, Britt, if there is a, you know, we'll see what happens tonight, but if things change a bit, that it gives the president a little bit of room to maybe bend in a slightly different direction on energy independence.
Well, he's got to do, you know, politically, to accomplish things, if he loses control of both houses, he's going to have to bend. He's going to have to bend. The question for me is whether he will look at that and say, okay, I'm going to go back to being the Joe Biden I used to be, right? That everybody knew, and Mitch McConnell and he were friends and negotiated things together, or whether he'll just plow ahead. And you know, I've heard it. Ben Domenech was discussing this with us this afternoon. Ben's view is that he'll lose all these moderates if he loses. The party will lose those moderates, and it'll be ever more populated than it was before with lefties.
Yeah.
And it'll be harder for him to move in that direction.
I guess a lot will depend on what he decides about
I'm not
running
sure
again,
I agree with
you know?
that, but that's an interesting perspective.
Juan, what about that close? You know, right after saying that oil companies should produce more, he closes with "there's no more drilling" in a Q&A with that environmentalist.
Right.
It was definitely a mixed message in just 2 weeks' time.
I don't think it was a mixed message so much as one. Remember Joe Manchin's response, which is, what the hell are you saying, right?
About the coal, yeah.
Yeah, because Joe Manchin is going to have to get reelected pretty shortly. I mean, you've got a Democrat in pretty much a red state, and the Democrats need him to stay there. And Joe Manchin has his own self-interest, so he's saying, why are you putting me at a disadvantage with my constituents? But if you look at the issue of climate change, it is a real motivator for Democratic voters. It is one of their key, you know, we talked about sort of the big issues for all voters being economy and the like, but what we've seen from the Fox exit polls is there's a constellation of issues, as they call it, that appeal to Democrats and got Democrats to the polls tonight, to the extent that we'll find out how much of a turnout there was. But that constellation includes abortion, includes climate change in a big way.
Trey?
To my friend Juan, West Virginia, Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton did not win a single solitary county in that state. So it is as red as you can get. I will defend Joe Biden. There's some talk that he's not going to give a statement tomorrow. I actually got a copy of his statement already. I exercise my right to remain silent under the Fifth Amendment because there is no good explanation.
Katie?
Well, I was going to also respond to why President Biden has not committed to a press conference tomorrow, is because he's already going to a funeral for democracy. So that's already on his schedule, as they've said all week. But going back to what Maria was saying about the states she's watching in terms of energy-producing states, that's great in terms of jobs. The regulations the administration has put on to oil and gas companies, while they berate them and say they should bring gas prices down. But every single state in the country is a consumer of oil and gas, especially states in the Northeast like New York and New Hampshire and Pennsylvania, where these issues of cost and inflation have gone way up as a result of Joe Biden's war on energy. And so it'll be interesting to see if that plays out at the end of the night.
Yeah, 500,000 energy jobs in Western Pennsylvania.
There you go.
Alone.
Coming up, we are minutes away from the top of the hour. Another big batch of election results. We could have some calls. Tucker Carlson joins us with his thoughts on the night so far.
And more coming up with Bill Hemmer at the big board. Stay with us. We'll be right back with more of Democracy 2022.
get such a kick out of people coming up to me and saying, how's your va-va-voom? And I go, I'll tell you about my va-va-voom. I'm writing, I'm directing. I never said I was retiring. I'm refiring, and I need fuel for that. I'm taking my balance in nature, and it's making a difference. I'm living my life. Va-va-voom.
Start your journey to better health by going to balanceofnature.com. And don't forget to use discount code VOOM.
Avoiding triggers but can't keep migraines away? Qulipta can help prevent migraines. You can't always prevent what's going on outside. That's why Qulipta helps what's going on inside. Qulipta gets right to work. In a 3-month study, Qulipta significantly reduced monthly migraine days, and the majority of people reduced them by 50 to 100%. Qulipta blocks CGRP, a protein believed to be a cause of migraines. Qulipta is a preventive treatment for episodic migraine. Most common side effects are nausea, constipation, and tiredness. Learn how AbbVie could help you save on Qulipta.
Meet Leon the Third, Leon the Second, and Leon the First of them all. 3 generations who all bank differently with Chase. Leon's saving up for his first set of wheels. Nice try.
Really?
This Leon's paying for his paint job on the spot. And this Leon, as a Chase private client, he's in the south of France taking out cash with no ATM fees. That's because this family of Leons has Chase.
Actually, it's Leon.
Ooh la la. One bank for now, for later, for life. Chase, make more of what's yours.
There's an uneasiness growing within today's parents. Questions arise around what our kids are being taught, exposed to, and influenced by. Thankfully, a fully engaged, well-informed parent is a powerful thing. That's why I support Answers in Genesis, and I would recommend that you do as well, because it's important to remember that the battle for our kids' minds isn't one in the courts or the classroom. It's one from the safety and comfort of our own home. So be the influence our kids need and support Answers in Genesis today.
It's a critical hour as polls close across 21 states, including 2 pivotal battlegrounds. Pennsylvania.
We're going to have a new birth of freedom.
This is a time for real hope. There's so much at stake in this race.
You can't be free if you're not brave.
Florida.
I'm not backing down. I'm ready for a fight.
We will send shockwaves across this country.
We will continue to fight and fight and fight the Lord.
That's why we vote. That's why we're going to win.
The future of our nation is on the line. 161 House seats, 10 Senate seats, and 12 governorships. Which party will take control? What happens in this hour could change everything.
It is 8 o'clock in New York, and polls have just closed in 16 more states. We start in the critical battleground of Pennsylvania, where the Fox News decision desk says it's too early to call this race. Pennsylvania is another historically slow counting state, so it could be, warning here, a long night for both Dr. Oz and Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman. We'll keep you updated on that one.
It is also too early to call New Hampshire, the Senate race there between incumbent Democrat Maggie Hassan and Republican Don Bolduc. Hassan won this seat by just over 1,000 votes in 2016, making her the most vulnerable Democrat up for re-election in this cycle.
Remember how we talk about those numbers, the votes that come in. That's what the percentages are. In Florida, we can project Republican Senator Marco Rubio has defeated Democratic Representative Val Demings with millions of votes in. That's a big win for Rubio. Was expected, but some of those percentages in Miami-Dade and other counties where he hadn't won before are pretty stunning.
Yeah, very notable what's happening in Florida tonight. Over to Illinois, where Democratic Senator Tammy Duckworth has a lead. That race is too early to call at this hour.
In Missouri, the race between Republican Eric Schmidt and Democratic candidate Trudy Bush Valentine, also too early to call, but Schmidt has a lead there.
Richard Blumenthal in Connecticut has a lead in his home state. This one also too early to call.
Interesting. In Maryland, Senator Chris Van Hollen will win his race, defeating GOP candidate Chris Chafee. And we can also call the Alabama Senate race, where Republican Katie Britt is projected to win. She takes over the seat from Senator Shelby.
Yeah, looks pretty close there. You sure you're ready to call that?
Yeah, we're ready. Chief of Staff. She was his Chief of Staff.
2 races in Oklahoma, both too early to call, but both Republican candidates lead at this point. In the first, James Langford fighting for a second full term. And in the special election, Republican Markwayne Mullin is hoping to replace Senator Jim Inhofe.
All right, so let's take a look at the balance of power as we see it, 34-38. Again, the white are the ones we haven't yet called. Majority is 51. It stands now at 50-50. So we'll be tracking that all night. Moving to the governor's races in Florida, the Fox News decision desk projects GOP Governor Ron DeSantis will defeat Charlie Crist. Again, the margins here are eye-popping, and we'll let Britt talk about all of that in just a bit.
Yeah, that's an enormous number for Governor DeSantis in Pennsylvania tonight, and that'll have long-lasting ramifications that Britt will fill us in on in a moment. Let's take a look at Pennsylvania governor race. Josh Shapiro has a very strong lead there against Doug Mastriano. This one is also too early to call. There's 3% of the vote in that race.
At this hour, the Oklahoma governor race, too early to call. Democrat Joy Hoffmeister is running against Republican incumbent Kevin Stitt. This was rocky for a bit, but it's too early to call at that time.
Not enough data to call the race in Maine, though Governor Janet Mills has a lead against her predecessor, who was going for another round as governor there. We'll see what happens there. Paula Page.
And Massachusetts, we can project that Maura Healey will be the next governor of the Bay State, right next door in Maryland. Fox News can also project that Wes Moore will replace term-limited Republican governor Larry Hogan. So that goes to the Democrats.
And the Fox News decision desk says Governor Chris Sununu has a lead in the great state of New Hampshire. Numbers still coming in there.
Connecticut, Democratic Governor Ted Lamont has a lead against GOP candidate Bob Stefanowski.
Also not enough data in this one. This is Governor Dan McKee, who will take his first full term in office in Rhode Island. He is the incumbent there against Callis in Rhode Island.
J.B. Pritzker also has a lead for a second term in Illinois. Expect that to go Democrat, but it's too early to call.
Alabama, we can project that Governor Kay Ivey will win a second term in the state of Alabama.
And finally, Fox News projects Republican Bill Lee wins in Tennessee. He will remain the governor of the volunteer state.
And we can also project Governor Phil Scott, the Republican, will win a fourth term in office. He defeats Democrat Brenda Siegel.
Okay, I think that's the races we have. Everybody take a break.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
So we're still waiting for a lot of numbers to come in here. We're getting some early indications in places like New York, which doesn't close until 9 o'clock.
But let's just digest that Florida
I'd love to.
race.
Yeah.
I mean, that is eye-popping, Dana.
Yeah, so again, I think Governor DeSantis, who had a tough election his first time around, has shown himself to be a very competent governor, who really listens to the people of Florida, responds to them. You know, he was a very different governor when it came to COVID. You had people fleeing from New England states in order to move there because the schools were opened. And he runs the state very well. And he wasn't afraid also to reach out to different people. And that number in Miami-Dade, if that holds true, it'll be great to get some Karl Rove analysis on that as well as Florida. If you remember, well, of course, he remembers the election in 2000, a big deal. The interesting thing about his opponent, Charlie Crist, I don't know if you would have realized this, he will be the first person in Florida to lose a statewide race as a Republican, an independent, and a Democrat.
Wow.
There's DeSantis campaign headquarters right now exploding in Tampa tonight.
I think they're watching Fox. We welcome Harold Ford Jr., former Tennessee congressman, co-host of The Five. Welcome to the panel. With this big Republican win, we'd love you to weigh in. No, but I do want to read this. This is from David Plouffe, the President Obama's 08 campaign manager, who said, quote, "The Obama coalition in Florida is gone."
Wow.
That's pretty stunning. If you look at the numbers here, Miami-Dade County, Hillsborough County, Osceola County, these are places they did not win. Republicans, now they're winning in big numbers.
Well, Democrats have proved, I think, not to be able to adapt to changing political circumstances in a situation. Clearly, we've gone through COVID, all the things that spawned from it, from supply chain challenges to the challenges of getting our kids back to school. Governor DeSantis is being rewarded for that. And I think if you're going to counter him, you have to counter him with substance. You've got to counter him with an alternative course that's going to make life better for citizens in Florida. And frankly, it doesn't look as if the three-time, did you say he lost as a Democrat, a Republican, and independent? Congressman Chris, Governor Chris was not able to mount that message. If you Governor DeSantis, this win tonight, I think in many ways, not only rolls Democrats, but it also helps, it will roll Republicans as well, because some choices are going to have to be made very soon about whom is the national leader, who's the leader of the party. for Republicans. Is it Ron DeSantis? Is it Donald Trump? Or is it someone else? But tonight is a night for Governor DeSantis. Congratulations to him. Well done.
Let's bring in Ben Domenech. Ben, you know, we talked a little bit about governors and how they are elected or reelected based on competence. And I think back to Hurricane Ian just a short time ago. People got their power back on, I think, in record time. And it wasn't the kind of situation where you're going around the state and people are saying, I keep calling the governor and nothing's happening. In fact, they were saying exactly the opposite. They were lauding his performance.
He was proving that he could build a bridge in 3 days and things like that. Look, what's happened in Florida has to take over the conversation tomorrow, no matter what the rest of the night holds. This is a huge sea change. And as Dana said, as Carl remembers, you know, this is a situation that I think we could never have anticipated even a few years ago. To see Miami-Dade come in the way that it did, it just is an indictment, I think, not of just the other side, but of the White House's approach to this election. If you were focused on issues that were on social media, issues like abortion, guns, climate, etc., I think you lost the forest for the trees. You were paying attention to issues that might matter to your progressive base online, but they're not present at the kitchen table where people are trying to make ends meet and where they do prize the kind of competence that you're talking about and keeping things open even during the intense time of COVID.
It's also,
we should go ahead.
I just want to say, you know, it's a place that during COVID, it became sort of the option, right? People said, I want to move to Florida because of this. So they were choosing where they wanted to live based on the way that the state was handling it.
And they stayed. That's the key. They stayed. They re-registered to vote. And Ron DeSantis takes credit for all of that. Also, he's really done some great investments in workforce development. I think the Republican Party becoming the party of the worker, a plus 12 shift from 2010, Martha, on the number of blue-collar workers who call themselves Republicans. That's got to do with these great governors. Mike Pence was one a long time ago who did it, saying, I'm going to invest in technical, vocational, educational opportunities. Not everyone has college materials, so what? We need welders and carpenters and pipe fitters. And now you have Joe Biden saying they should be paying for the student loans of doctors and lawyers. I just wanted to point out one thing. In Charlie Crist's congressional seat, we're about to flip that. With a female, Pinellas County, Brett, with a female Hispanic veteran named Ana Paulina Luna. Keep your eye on her. 95% of the vote is in. She's up by 8,000 votes. It's huge. That's Charlie Crist congressional district. Not only has he lost 3 times, Dana, with 3 different parties, but we take his congressional seat with what is the growing trend for Republican candidates, female Hispanic veteran. Huge.
You know,
Well, you haven't mentioned the former president, but you do use his terminology.
I live in Florida now, and back when he was in the House, DeSantis, I used to see him around Fox News in Washington. He seemed to me kind of a standard issue Republican conservative congressman of no particular distinction. And he ran, you may recall, for the nomination for governor against Adam Putnam, who had been in the House.
We did a debate between Putnam and DeSantis.
Exactly, and Putnam was thought a rising star in the GOP for a long time. And he's a very able guy. And I remember he said to me when I was talking to him once, he said he didn't think DeSantis wanted to be governor. He thought he wanted to run for the Senate, but there was no real opening there, so he ran for governor. Well, look now. I mean, he had the stones to stand up to the medical establishment, the political establishment, to the Democrats and the media in the state of Florida on COVID, which I think is where he really made his mark and was willing and took the chance and believed in his own, the advice he was getting from his medical advisors, and I think it's played out for him, and now he is where he is.
And we shouldn't overlook the win by Marco Rubio. Democrats had real hopes that Val Demings was going to be the giant killer in that race as the congresswoman from Florida, former police chief from Orlando. It's not close, and in some of these counties, it's equal or greater than DeSantis' spread. Okay, let's head over to Bill Hemmer. Back where we stand so far tonight.
Yeah, I'm going to stir the pot here in a little bit, so give me a moment, okay? I just want to set it up the right way, and then you guys can all have a stab at it when we're done here, okay? Talking about Florida, I don't want to overlook it. Keep in mind, when we began this night, okay, Republican leadership thought they had to flip four seats in Florida, right? Or pick up 4, okay? So you had Florida 4 called for Republicans, Florida 7 called for Republicans. Kellyanne beat me to it. This is Florida 13 right here. This is Ana Paulina Luna, about 99% in. She's going to win based on this right here. So that would be a flip. That is Charlie Crist's old C2 right now is being defeated by Ron DeSantis at the governor's level. I would also point your attention to Florida 15. So this is just east of Tampa. All right, right now, and Laura Lee, who used to work for Ron DeSantis, is now leading Cone easily now, about 96% in. That is what they call a new open seat. Based on the census, Florida gained a seat, and Republicans are going to pick up there as well. The point I'm making here is that if you needed 4, you got 4. Now the question is, can your incumbents all across the country hang on? And I'm going to end this report with one thought on there. But before I leave Florida, just want to show you what's happening here, okay? So this is Rubio, all right? And this is Rubio and Miami-Dade. Let me get this set up the right way. Okay, sorry, clear that. Boom, 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 boom. We're in Miami-Dade. Rubio is at 53.4. Remember, Cuban Americans, Latinos, right? South American Latinos. Here is DeSantis at 54.2. So they're real close with each other, right? There's Rubio. There's DeSantis. And then in 2020, there's Joe Biden. So we'll get into it later tonight, but I just wanted to put it out there right now that people like DeSantis, if he's going to get in this race for the primary battle there for 2020, he's going to be making a big case about Latinos, Cuban Americans, appealing to Democrats who live in a blue county like Miami-Dade. Okay, let's leave there. Let's go to Georgia. I left you off a moment ago about Herschel Walker. The trend I see is this, and now there are 2 other candidates on the ticket that are not on the board, but right now they're picking up, one's picking up 1.5 points, other's picking up about 0.5 point. So the total around 2 right now. So in a really close battle, you know, if you peel off 2%, maybe you don't get to 50%. Or maybe you keep below that margin and don't come out a winner. But I just want to share this with the audience. Here is Walker statewide at about 30% at 43%. Now here is Kemp and Abrams. So again, you see the difference, right? 47.4, and he's right around 43. So he stayed at that margin, guys, of about 4 to 4.5, no more than 5. But there was a separation of about 4.5 points between what Kemp is doing and the governor's race and what Herschel Walker is doing in the Senate race. And maybe in the end that matters, so just keeping an eye on that. Now, I mentioned these incumbents, and I'm going to come back to this right here just to complete the play, as we say. I'll come back to the Senate in a moment here. Remember, Republicans are trying to hang on to their incumbents, otherwise all the gains you're making in Florida don't matter. This is Ohio 1. That's my hometown. That's Cincinnati. Steve Chabot, he is a political cockroach in all the best sense, in that he wins races that people don't expect him to win. They chopped up his district. They gave him a big part of the city of Cincinnati. This district really runs against him. And with about 1/3 of the vote in, he is trailing. So if Greg Landsman holds on and beats Steve Chabot, that would be one of those flips now that Republicans they need to find another seat to flip in order to get the majority in the House. So we're watching that throughout the night. Here is where you are in the Senate, just about 11% in. Tim Ryan leading J.D. Vance, and we'll see where the vote comes in throughout the night. The 3 C's, guys: Cincinnati, Columbus, and Cleveland. I could go on for about 3 more hours, but my time is up because they told me to wrap 3 times. Back to you guys.
We'll be back to you shortly.
We'll be talking Ohio.
All right, so let's go to Tucker Carlson, who joins us tonight. Tucker, great to have you with us. I'm thinking about you, also a big Florida resident. You have, spend a lot of time there. We've got double-digit wins for the governor, Ron DeSantis, and also Marco Rubio, and a huge night when you look at what has transformed in Miami-Dade County. What are you thinking, Tucker?
Well, I think it's Miami-Dade County that really jumps out at you. DeSantis lost it by a lot 4 years ago. He's winning it pretty solidly, it looks like, right now. So what you're looking at is a realignment of voters. And I really think we're undervaluing the extent to which BLM, the Democratic Party going all in for the Black Lives Matter movement in the summer of 2020, really moved Hispanic voters to the Republican side. I think it shows up in polling results. Nobody wants to say it, but it's absolutely a meaningful factor, I would say, in this. But I mean, if tomorrow morning we wake up and these numbers in Miami-Dade and Texas are real, and possibly in Arizona, then I think you're looking at really a different Democratic coalition.
What do you make of the numbers, Tucker, that we're seeing out of Pennsylvania, that Senate race is really, really close, and it could be a long time before we call it?
Well, that's the problem, and I feel so sorry for you, Brett and Martha, because it probably will be a very late night for you and a tense one, and it points up the problem. Look, the country is really closely divided in a lot of places. Pennsylvania is one, Nevada's another, Arizona, lots of different places. And so you're going to have close election results. And people have to have confidence that those results are real, that they can trust the mechanics of the election. And what happened today in Maricopa County, where some huge percentage of voting machines, electronic voting machines, according to the Arizona Republic, 30%. They claim these are Dominion voting machines, but it almost doesn't matter. Electronic voting machines didn't allow people to vote, apparently. And that, whatever you think of it, the cause of it, it shakes people's faith in the system. That is an actual threat to democracy, and it points up the core problem, which is we're not really very serious about democracy if we're using electronic voting machines, or if we're not requiring photo ID to vote. We could have secure elections. We don't, because a small number of people don't want them. But until we do, you're going to have these moments where everybody in the country fears volatility because one side doesn't believe the result is real. And you've seen it on both sides. I mean, you saw yesterday Democrats suggesting that electronic voting machines could be hacked. Democrats, this ran in Politico. So it's not just, the crazy right. It's everybody is losing faith in the system itself. So I hope that there's one thing that comes out of this, and I hope it's bipartisan. No more electronic voting machines. France doesn't use them because they care about democracy. Require ID, and then we can just call it a day. Everyone knows the election results can be believed, and the temperature goes down. I really hope that happens.
Nice tie, Tucker. I knew this was going to happen someday, and now it finally has.
Britt and you have the same tie. The exact same tie. You're wearing the same tie.
It's election tie.
You go to the same school? What happened there?
Not quite, but something like that.
Tucker, you just said a moment ago, a different Democrat coalition. And I think that depending on where this all goes tonight, we're just looking at some of the early results right now. That might be one of the big stories that really emerges from this moment, where we're seeing groups that have been courted by Democrats for more than a generation, who are now making a choice that is not based on the box that they have been told they belong in and who they should vote for, but they are, interested in all the same things that all Americans are interested in because they're Americans.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And it's really a hopeful outcome, I would say. And I'm not saying that as a partisan. I'm saying it because you don't want a country where it's white men against everybody else. And that really was the dream of the Democratic Party. That's the politics they hope to create. Mm-hmm. And what you're seeing is instead NPR listeners versus everyone else, right? So in the end, you're going to have a Democratic coalition that's only people with Pledge Drive tote bags versus the whole country. And they're not going to win if that's what they're left with.
We knew we could count on you, Tucker.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you, Tucker.
Next up, we head to Denver to check in on the Colorado Senate race, testing the power of the Trump endorsement out there.
Plus results from some key House races. We're watching those 3 races in Virginia that are a real bellwether here. We'll get you an update on those as our Fox News special coverage of the midterm elections rolls on.
Commanding officer called you one of the best pilots he's ever seen. It must be hard being the naval aviator. It's the toughest job there is.
Based on the incredible true story.
Can't tell you how many times people have told me to give up, quit.
Of an American hero.
If I did, I wouldn't be here.
Just remember you belong down here with us too, okay?
This is war. We bring everyone home. Show off. Devotion.
That was pretty good. It's good.
In theaters, November 23rd, PG-13.
What is progress? Progress is investing in the future. It is connecting the world. It is feeling at home in a global community. Progress is creating the environment to make opportunities possible. Qatar. Exciting opportunities await.
Soon after the war in Ukraine broke out, CityServe started rescuing women, children, and the elderly. And as winter approaches, they need our help more than ever. From your neighborhood to the nation, CityServe International is providing food, shelter, and transportation to millions through a vast network of churches. Help us serve the people of Ukraine this winter by donating now. Go to cityserve.us to give.
Before Clear Choice, my dental health was so bad. I would be in a lot of pain. I wasn't able to eat. It was very hard.
Kimberly came to Clear Choice with a bunch of missing teeth, struggling with pain, with dental disease. Clear Choice dental implants solved her dental issues.
I feel so much better. I feel energized to go outside and play with my daughter. I can eat anything, like I don't have to worry. Clear Choice changed my life.
Here at GetRefunds.com, we get businesses an average payroll tax refund of $375,000.
$375K? That would cover the standing mixer you broke, huh?
Yes, Chef. Give us 8 minutes to collect some basic information, then we'll do the hard work to find out how much money your business is owed.
Hear that, Mikey? They're gonna do the hard work.
Sounds great!
We've helped thousands of businesses claim over $1 billion. And we can help yours too. GetRefunds.com, powered by Innovation Refunds.
Democracy in action tonight as we are waiting more calls, about a dozen states coming up, and we are getting more and more raw data. And you can see on the bottom of the screen, the ticker keeps on going through. These are the races that we called with the checks. You've seen that before. Throughout the night, we'll continue that. And we're watching some big races very closely. Ohio, we're getting more numbers in. We obviously made those calls in Florida. And Virginia, those House races that we've been watching, the three that are very crucial to telling us how maybe this night is shaping up.
Yeah. Are we going to look at those? Are we going to Bill? Or are we going to panel? Panel. Karl Rove. You were just looking at North Carolina, which we can look at some of the early vote in. What are you thinking there?
I was actually looking at the Virginia results, which I've got a source that's more up to date than ours there. But if you look at it, Virginia 7. I'm looking at over half the vote in, and Vega is keeping her lead with more than half the vote in, and same in 2. I'm looking at.
We have 31%. You have.
I'm looking at 38 there, and it's
okay.
And it's the same 58-42.
What I'm hearing is that they were winning in the early vote in Virginia too.
Well, I'm saying the Republican is winning
correct
by the same margin with I'm looking at about 40% of the vote now.
Okay, back on 7 then. You want that?
And
go ahead, Kellyanne.
Well, no, this Yesley Vega, I've been watching these ads in Washington, D.C. for a while now. She has her Spanish-speaking father in the ad. They've thrown everything at her, basically calling her the sexist and racist. The usual January 6th. They don't talk about inflation crime. I think she's going to prevail. Another Hispanic woman winning as a Republican. But I'm really interested in the Elaine Luria race. Just very quickly, she's on the January 6th committee, and she became nationally known because of her time on the January 6th committee. Adam Kinzinger resigned. Liz Cheney was defeated handily. Stephanie Murphy, a Florida Democrat on the committee, also resigned. And now Elaine Luria may actually lose. And you say, oh, what can you read into that? Well, I don't think that's all coincidence. I think it's some causation. We see in everybody's polling January 6th as a major electoral issue declining in importance. And I think if you put almost all into that and not talking about the issues that people care about in your districts, you really run the risk of losing. So I'm keeping an eye on that race.
This was a district that is considered by the Cook Report to be a Republican +2 district. Right now, the Republican is winning it by 16. Go to number 7. Number 7 is seen as a Democrat +1 district, and the Republican is winning by 11, nearly 11.
Mm-hmm.
And then go to 10. 10 is a +10 Democrat district, and the Democrat is winning by less than 3.
2.5. 2.5. I'll give you another one here that's kind of stuck out to me down in Florida. Florida to me starts sounding a little bit like Arizona 20 years ago, right? Oklahoma or Kansas. I mean, you really think about how red it's becoming here. This is Senate level here, okay? This is Osceola County. South of Orlando, not a ton of people, 400,000, but sizable enough. Joe Biden won this county by 12 points. It's 56% Latino. So as we move throughout the night and we think about the results in Florida, Miami-Dade, and we think about Osceola, think about Cuban Americans, South American Latinos, I mean, what's going to happen along that border between Texas and Mexico?
Yeah.
There are three great little House races that we're about to get to in a moment here, so we'll see that. Maybe it shows up again in Nevada, Carl, and maybe Colorado and some other places we haven't got to yet.
We're focused a lot on these Senate races, how tight they are, but there is a disconnect a little bit with these House races that seem like they're separated. Some of them. Can you go to Indiana 1 for Dana Perino?
Sure, yeah. I sure can. That's a Senate race. We called that for Young on the House race here, northwestern part of the state. This is Frank Mervan is the Democrat. So you got about 20% in. He's leading by 21 points, Dana. This is primarily Lake County. And I remember, was it 2008, the primary race on the Democratic side between Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton? I remember we were working until 2 o'clock in the morning waiting for results out of Nebraska. And we're like, what are we doing here? And one night, Indiana had the primary, and we had our entire focus on Lake County, which is Gary, Indiana. And I don't think they reported that night.
Yeah, it was very late.
Thank you for indulging me.
You got it.
All right, Ben, what are you looking at?
You know, I think that what we may be seeing here is the summer of love coming home to roost. You remember that comment from the Seattle mayor about, you know, the 2020, you know, strife and violence that we saw, that she hoped for it being a summer of love. She's not the mayor anymore, by the way. And there was obviously a lot of skepticism about that, I think, after 2020, saying, you know, this association with the Black Lives Matter movement may not have hurt Democrats as much and that sort of thing. I think now you're seeing all these different suburban, particularly women, but suburban areas of the country come back and express themselves about the Democratic continued devotion to this anti-cop, you know, pro sort of chaos agenda, because it's not just crime, it's homelessness, it's vagrancy, it's all the things that we see. And I think in a number of these areas, you know, particularly not just these Virginia races, but I think we may end up seeing this in, you know, in New York's Hudson River Valley. We may see it in Pennsylvania 17, which is the suburbs, the Allegheny County, the old Connor Lamb district. You know, you could see this really playing out, I think, in a way that could prove very beneficial for Republicans in the House.
And again, you're seeing the impact of the last 2 years, whether it's the Black Lives Matter movement or COVID, and you're seeing this enormous change in the state of Florida. I think about a cover of the New York Post a month or so ago, 50,000 people, you know, leaving New York. So that's going to be interesting when we look at the New York vote and see what happened, you know, when those disgruntled people all left. That may be a factor in the governor's race.
94%. We are 38 seconds away from some next race calls and awaiting results from key battleground states. We, as you see, are getting raw vote totals added to our Fox News voter analysis, which enables us and the decision desk to make some of these calls. We are also tracking a lot of these House races. Remember, Republicans need 5 to take control, and it's looking like a good night for the Republicans as we look at it now across the country, but we're going to be following it throughout the night. Here we go. The countdown is on. 8 seconds to the next calls on the East Coast and one place where a governor's race is probably going to be called. 8:30 on the East Coast, 7:30 in Arkansas, where polls are now closed in the Senate race there.
We can project that Senator John Boozman will return to the upper chamber for a 3rd term, defeating Democrat Natalie James.
Meanwhile, Republican candidate and former White House press secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders is projected to win the governor's race. She replaces term-limited Republican Governor Asa Hutchinson. And obviously, Sarah Sanders, known well here.
Former press secretary at the White House.
And the former governor of Arkansas.
Yeah, she did not have any problem winning that race. It's a huge win for Sarah Huckabee Sanders in Arkansas tonight, and just a couple of races that we got in there. And we're waiting for more of these poll numbers to come in and more raw vote to come in as well. We want to go to Grady Trimble. Let's go to Grady Trimble. Let's go to Grady Trimble, who is standing by. He is at Senator Ron Johnson's campaign headquarters. This is a race we haven't really talked about yet tonight. He's in Keena, Wisconsin, as Ron Johnson tries to seek another term in the Senate. Hi, Grady.
Hi, Martha. Senator Ron Johnson told us this evening he's feeling cautiously optimistic about his chances in this race, but no doubt it's going to be a close one between the Republican incumbent and his progressive challenger, Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes. I spoke to voters in Oshkosh today who were voting at the same polling place where Johnson cast his ballot this morning, and every single one of them told me their number one issue is inflation and the economy. And Johnson blames Barnes and Democrats for higher prices, as well as a rise in crime in some of Wisconsin's largest cities. But Barnes is going to be counting on voters in those cities, specifically Milwaukee and Madison, to carry him tonight. And in the governor's race between Democratic Governor Tony Evers and Republican businessman Tim Michels, very prominent in the Badger State, that could be even closer than the Senate race. Polls here in Wisconsin close in about 30 minutes, Brett and Martha, but this is not a state that's known for quick vote counts, so it could be a long one here and for all of the campaigns that we're following tonight.
Brady, thank you. We'll check back with you a little bit later tonight.
Over to Colorado now. Democratic Senator Michael Bennet, the incumbent, is hoping to fend off a challenge from Republican Joe O'Dea. Jeff Paul standing by at O'Dea's campaign headquarters. Good evening, Jeff.
Yeah, good evening, Brett. Polls here in Colorado about to close in about 30 minutes, and so far we've seen pretty much a steady stream all day of folks showing up to polling places like this to drop off their ballots, and each of those votes is really going to matter, especially when it comes to this U.S. Senate race, which in the last few days some polls have shown has really started to tighten. Now, on one side you've got the Republican challenger Joe O'Dea. He's a CEO of a construction company, and what makes his candidacy really interesting is that he is not only running without the support of former President Donald Trump, but he has said that if Trump runs again, he will actively campaign against him. On the other side, you have the Democrat who was appointed to the job in 2009, ran twice, Michael Bennet, and he is ready to move on to his third term and has really spent a lot of time, as of recent, vocally saying that he disagrees with Biden on certain key issues, especially how he's handled the border and student loan debt relief. So it really could come down, as this race appears to be tightening, to who shows up, who's more passionate, especially here in Colorado, a state where you could show up on the same day of Election Day, register, and vote. Brett?
All right, Jeff, thank you.
So meantime, the polls are closed now in New Hampshire, where Republican Don Bolduc is in a surprisingly close race against Democratic incumbent Maggie Hassan. Hillary Vaughn has been watching that one for us, and she's at Bolduc's campaign headquarters tonight. Hi, Hillary.
Hi, Martha and Brett. Well, retired General Don Bolduc really brought the fight to incumbent Democrat Senator Maggie Hassan in the final weeks of this campaign, turning this into a dead heat into today. And now national Republicans think this Senate seat is in play. A spokesperson with the NRSC telling me that they are confident that they will win this Senate seat in New Hampshire. A source with the Bolduc campaign also tells me that they are feeling good. They're looking at some of the turnout in these Republican strongholds. They're saying it's surpassing 2018 levels and on track to hit presidential level turnout. They think that that is good news for them. They say this momentum is in their favor, and that's something they have seen on the ground. As they say, they've done over 80 town halls up and down the state. A source with the Hassan campaign tells me that they're feeling okay. They say it's still early, but they are also bracing for a longer night. It really comes down to turnout, and today the New Hampshire Secretary of State told me they are looking at potentially record turnout today for a midterm election, and that's notable because about 90% of New Hampshire voters show up in person to vote on Election Day, and that is something that the Bolduc campaign says if there's record turnout, that is a win for them. Martha and Brett?
Okay, Hillary, thank you. The Fox News decision desk can now project that Illinois Senator Tammy Duckworth will defeat Republican attorney Kathy Salvi. Duckworth is an Iraq War veteran, Purple Heart recipient.
Also in Illinois, the decision desk says that Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker will win a second term as he prevails over his GOP challenger, Darren Bailey.
Let's bring back our panel. I want to turn to Ohio, Harold Ford Jr., and you've talked a lot about Democrats, how you thought the best candidate they had on the field was Tim Ryan in that Senate race against J.D. Vance. He is performing pretty well. If you look at the vote total coming in, we don't have all of it, obviously, to be able to make a projection, but it is neck and neck in Ohio. That is a red-leaning state.
he's run a campaign, and the race is not over, so I'm going to say ran. He's run a campaign on the economy, on helping everyday Ohioans get to higher ground and make life better for their kids. That's the kind of campaign that Democrats, when they did win in Ohio and Pennsylvania consistently, those are the kind of campaigns they ran in Michigan and across the Midwest. Tim Ryan, win or lose tonight, I think gives a roadmap for Democrats, and I would even argue Republicans, for how you run to represent everyday hardworking Americans. Kellyanne talked about the relief that Biden wants to give to student loan forgiveness. I would happen to agree with you. I don't think that was the right thing to do. Tim has said that. Tim has said that he doesn't believe that Joe Biden should run again in 2024. You're not finding a lot of Republicans who are saying whom they want to run or not run, and you're certainly not finding Democrats say that. I push back just a little bit on something my friend Tucker said about Black Lives Matter. I don't know how that matters in this campaign at all. I think the reason they were doing so well in Florida is because Ron DeSantis got schools back open, he got bridges built, he got people back in their homes, he got electricity back going. You could be blue in running this country. You could be yellow in running this country and get elected and reelected on those issues. Furthermore, Hispanic voters, they want us to talk about economic growth and helping their kids be better in their lives than they have been in theirs here in America. That's what Democrats have to get back to. And finally, Democrats, win or lose tonight, we have to reset. The liberal-leaning, left-leaning people in our party, they may have good intentions, but their ability to implement, let alone come up with good proposals, has proved lacking. And tonight, I think we're going to see more and more of that kind of result.
You know, Carl, I'm looking at Ohio as well here, and maybe we can get a look at where the vote is still outstanding. And it's interesting, we did a town hall discussion with Tim Ryan and J.D. Vance just about a week ago, and one of the things that Tim Ryan has complained about is that the party abandoned him, and that he was not given the money that he needed to run this race because he had distanced himself a lot from Joe Biden, and also because they thought they didn't have a chance in Ohio.
Yeah, look, it was a state that Donald Trump carried by 8 points. He carried the state of Ohio by a bigger margin than he carried Texas. So Schumer made a decision, the Senate Democratic leader, that his super PAC would not be involved in the race. McConnell invested $35 million in the race, and which would have been useful to spend elsewhere, but Vance needed the help because he won the primary with less than 30% of the vote and was being challenged by Ryan.
Worth noting that Vance was one of the candidates who had criticized McConnell.
Right.
And McConnell weighs in with PAC money that he rounds up to try to save his candidacy.
Right.
In the meantime, a certain other person we can talk about who raised a ton of money spent very damn little of it to support the candidates that he endorsed.
There were a lot of outside groups that pumped money into Ohio to help J.D. Vance at the beginning when he took
Peter Thiel put, I think, $15 million into a super PAC to get him elected, and then hasn't been seen in the general election. I think Britt's point is an accurate one. Let's see where the $100 million that President Trump has in his war chest after the election, think about how it could have been deployed.
And when you've got a discrepancy like we're seeing between the governor's race with Mike DeWine and the Senate race with J.D. Vance, I mean, you could drive a truck through it right now.
Take a look at the big suburban county just north of Columbus, Delaware County.
Hey, Bill, can you put that up, Ohio?
DeWine is carrying it handily, and Vance is losing it to Ryan. This is a big Republican.
But tonight, interviewed on television, asked about the candidates that he endorsed, Mr. Trump said, quote, this is a quote, I've seen the video, he said this, quote, well, I think if they win, I should get all the credit. If they lose, I should not be blamed at all. He was kidding.
I want to say something about Ohio, though. Ohio has a Democratic senator in Sherrod Brown. He gets reelected pretty handily. And that's not ticket splitting so much as they go for people who talk about their issues. If Tim Ryan is the future of the Democratic Party and the roadmap, Joe Biden is irrelevant after tonight. You just admitted it, my
there might be another guy relevant, too, we just talked about.
Well, but let's just focus on this for a moment. I mean, Tim Ryan votes with Joe Biden 100% of the time, more than some of these other Democratic Senate candidates. And yet he runs ads bear-hugging Donald Trump on trade. And so we'll see if that actually works here. But they do have a Democratic senator in Sherrod Brown.
Just quickly, where's the outstanding vote? I mean, it's not a lot raw vote total in.
Correct. So this is what we're doing here, just so our folks at home can see it. We've got it at 28%, okay? If we go into the purple range, the deeper the purple, the more outstanding the vote, okay? So let's go put this into action and try and find where the votes are, okay? Look, what I see here, Tim Ryan's from Northeastern Ohio. He's from Trumbull County, Warren, Ohio. He represented that District 13. They got redrawn, pushed a little further west. But this is, well, I'll show you. This is Mahoning County. Take that check off. Trumbull County, sorry. That's where he's from. But he had represented Mahoning County, which is Youngstown. There's no votes coming in yet for Tim Ryan in Mahoning County, so we'll see how that goes. Just come back statewide and just look at this here, okay? So they take a step back here, all right? There are a lot of votes here up just south of Toledo, but it's hard to say right now. If you were to ask me, based on what I'm watching here, I'd look at Northeastern Ohio. It just seems to be the darker purple there in some of these counties up in the northeastern part of the state.
Which
we'll
is
see
Democratic
which way.
friendly.
It can be, yeah. I tell you, what's really interesting about that part of Ohio is that that's when you knew in 2016 that Trump was going to win this election. Because these were deep blue counties, Brett. They've been voting for Democrats for 50 years, and they crossed over to vote for Donald Trump. And that was really the first sign that night when I was watching this thing. Heck, I'll take you back there. Well, now this is 2020. And you see what Trump did. These are border counties along Pennsylvania. Energy's a big deal up there, blue-collar workers. They really tapped into what Donald Trump was talking about. Ashtabula, you see where he is. He was 60% for Trump. Down here in Trumbull County, he's better than 50% there. And Mahoning County, which is Youngstown, it's tighter, but still he came out a victor there in Mahoning County, Columbiana. Not as many voters there, but still 71%. So come back here now to what year are we in? 2022, he said. And okay, so this is how it's breaking down, all right? So up in the same part of the state that I just showed you,
yeah.
You see how blue it is, okay? Let's just go in here and see how many, okay, you're at a quarter of the votes. Ryan has a slight lead there. You're at a third of the vote here. He's 60% there. Nothing from Mahoning. Let's pop over here. Just
one quick thing.
County.
Is DeWine winning those counties?
Great question. Let me check that out. I haven't gone there yet. Okay. All right. Just hang with me. Let's just do the same exercise. DeWine won in Ashtabula. All right. DeWine won in Trumbull. All right. This is Akron down here, Stark County. DeWine won in Stark County. This is like Tim Ryan's. That's where he's from, right? He's at 56%. So
all right, we're going
that's
to
how
keep
it's
digging
breaking
in
Northeastern Ohio. You got it.
We'll dig into it. Thank you. We love that. No, that was beautiful. You know Ohio.
Brilliant.
It was brilliant. Even Dana likes it. All right, ahead, results from key Florida House races. We can call now Maria Salazar. This is Florida 27. She is a winner down there in Florida. And the balance of power in the House, we can take a look at it. And it's a big win. I mean, it's not small. You can see 34-19. We're going to be ticking through all of these seats again. The majority is 218. We have a lot of white to take care of there. Red, blue.
Lots to fill in. We got all night. We'll be right back.
When the fog clears, dozens of new conservatives will be heading to Washington. When they arrive, they'll have an ally. The Heritage Foundation, America's outpost in Washington. Right fight, right ideas, right now.
But all you got was ham? And all you got was turkey? With gravy. But it's an all-you-can-eat holiday buffet. A smorgasbord of all you want, all you need. Did I sit at the wrong table?
Sunday, an iconic showdown. A rivalry reborn. Cowboys, Packers, Sunday on Fox.
When the fog clears, dozens of new conservatives will be heading to Washington. When they arrive, they'll have an ally. The Heritage Foundation, America's outpost in Washington. Right fight, right ideas, right now.
We're up all night with special midterms coverage. Trace Gallagher will break down the results so far and how the balance of power is shaking out. Democracy 2022 continues at 1 a.m. Eastern on Fox News Channel.
High blood pressure is known as the silent killer, and right now it's more dangerous than ever before. But did you know you can lower the risk naturally? Introducing Respirate, the first ever FDA-cleared medical device, clinically proven to lower blood pressure.
The results I got from using Respirate were astounding.
The blood pressure this morning was 110/79.
Respirat's patented technology continuously monitors and guides your breathing into the therapeutic zone, causing the muscles surrounding the small blood vessels to relax so blood flows more freely and blood pressure is reduced. Multiple clinical trials report 82% of Respirat users reduced high blood pressure, and Respirat is the only American Heart Association recommended device for lowering blood pressure. We are so sure that Respirat will work for you, we guarantee it. If you don't lower your blood pressure in 60 days, you'll get your money back.
It's the best investment I've ever made in my life.
To watch a product demonstration or to buy, go to Respirat.com now.
Hi, I'm Wolfgang Back. When I started my online store, Wolfgang Back Home, I knew there would be a lot of orders to fill, and I wanted them to ship out fast. That's why I chose ShipStation. ShipStation helps manage orders, reduce shipping costs, and print out shipping labels. It's my secret ingredient.
ShipStation, the #1 choice of online sellers.
And Wolfgang Buck.
Go to shipstation.com/try and get 2 months free.
Welcome back. We'll take a live look at Florida. Senator Marco Rubio, Governor Ron, say that 3 times. DeSantis. Senator Rubio speaking right now. Let's listen in.
Eso es lo que vamos a hacer. A eso lo dedicamos. I'll close with this. On nights like this, we generally do these in hotels, and you've heard this story before, but I tell it because it's important to understand. I was raised by parents that worked in hotels like this. Well, not like this. They had slot machines and stuff like that, but in Las Vegas. My dad was a banquet bartender in rooms like this. My mother was a maid. She worked at Kmart. They worked hard, and you know, their story is really very typical of the American story. Frankly, in any other nation in the world, I would probably be doing the same job, and there's nothing wrong with those jobs. But what makes this nation so special and unique is that it is the one place on earth where people who work those jobs, like the people working here now, can go on to do other things. But even if they can't, the one thing they can always do is give their kids the chance to do all the things they didn't. And I think this is an American story that people everywhere in the country would understand.
Marco Rubio, a big winner over Val Demings in Florida, a huge win in some counties that really had never won before.
15% win for Marco Rubio, who goes on to another term as the Florida senator. Also, we have Steve Harrigan, who's at DeSantis headquarters. A huge night for them as well. Let's check in with him in Tampa. Hi, Steve.
Martha, this place just erupted about an hour ago when the news came out that we were calling it for Ron DeSantis. If there's one star of this election so far, it's got to be Florida's governor. 4 years ago, just think how far he's come, squeaking out a victory in the governor's race by less than 1% only after a recount. Now tonight, this is simply a dominant performance. And a couple of figures to keep in mind, DeSantis raised more than $209 million so he can fundraise. And if you look at the numbers, the demographics, a key one is going to have to be the Hispanic vote. He was able, you can hear them erupt behind me, he was able to pull it off and carry Miami-Dade County, a Democratic stronghold, the first Republican to do that for 20 years. So certainly a looming battle possibly ahead with President Trump, but this certainly offers a roadmap for his political future on the national stage. Guys, back to you.
There's a slight satellite delay with the Fox News channel down there. Steve Harrigan, thank you so much. The crowd seeing themselves in the background. Just one real quick fact, Val Demings raised $73 million in that race against Marco Rubio, and that was called in the first few minutes.
Just one other thought. When you look at DeSantis' numbers, I mean, he's in a range where when everything is in, he could win that by 20% in Florida, potentially. Right, Carl?
Well, pretty close, because the rest of the panhandle is now starting to come in.
Yeah.
Think about this. This is somebody who won by less than 0.5% last time around, and he is winning right now by 18 points. And Marco Rubio winning by 15.
Yeah.
A tsunami has swept over the state of Florida and left a gigantic red residue everywhere.
Well, let's see what's inside that Florida tsunami and whatever's happening around the country. Let's go to Shannon Breen with the voter analysis numbers. Shannon.
Okay, Brett, Martha, let's look at a race in the Senate that everybody is out there watching. Of course, Pennsylvania, where Democrat John Fetterman and Republican Mehmet Oz are in a very tight race. Now, Fetterman has been actively reaching out specifically to white non-college voters, hoping to win them over. But as you can see, a majority of them are actually choosing Oz. Oz at this point in our analysis. Fetterman supporters, on the other hand, they say they're more enthusiastic overall about their candidate, 51%, and that's compared to about 40% who say they are enthusiastic for Oz. This state was one of the most contentious in 2020. Looks like that could happen again. There are some poll closings that have been pushed back. Lawsuits, multiple, have already been filed. But a majority of voters so far there say they do feel confident their votes are going to be counted accurately. 7 in 10 say they feel good about that. Less than a third have their concerns. Now, turning back to our national results, this is an unsettling finding. Nearly 6 in 10 think life for the next generation of Americans is actually going to be worse than life today. And that's a pretty gloomy electorate for incumbents. A whole lot more to come in just minutes.
Shannon, thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Let's go to Harris, who is with Lee Carter, and they're talking to some voters tonight live. Hi, Harris.
Well, hello, and we are here with our live audience. Welcome back. Pollster Lee Carter, partner and president of Maslansky and Partners, is with me tonight as well. For months, voters have said their most important issues are inflation and the economy. Families across America are struggling to make ends meet, and prices are soaring at the grocery store, the gas station, and really everywhere else. Show of hands now to our audience, who has inflation/economy as their number one issue? That's a lot of people.
It sure is.
That's more than half the audience.
So, Jacqueline, you're from Long Beach, New York. Why is this issue most important to you?
Well, I had a certain standard of living that I had to cut back on now. Less vacations, buying cheaper things, not indulging as much. The gas prices are just really killing me because I do drive so much for a living, and in one day I saw the gas prices go up by 10 cents almost every couple of hours.
Wow.
In the morning it was, I don't know, $3.15. It went all the way up to $3.59
in one day.
One day.
Right.
And that really takes a toll.
And I know you're a nurse and you said
Yes.
you drive around a lot.
Yep.
All right, let's get to this. A key Senate race in Ohio between Democratic Congressman Tim Ryan and Republican author and businessman J.D. Vance. That race, as you know from Brett and Martha's coverage, is too close to call still at this point. But here's Vance on those top issues of the inflation and the economy that we're all dealing with. And once again, the red line represents Republicans, the blue is Democrats, the gray independents.
The reasons why we have this terrible inflation is because the Biden administration, backed by Tim, supported a lot of borrowing and spending, throwing fuel on the fire, which has caused the price of everything to go up. Now, we have to remember, Biden said that he wouldn't raise taxes on the middle class. But if you're a family right now dealing with the grocery prices and the energy prices, certainly you feel like your taxes have gone up a lot because the cost of living a good life in this country has gone up a lot.
So you can see Republicans gave that an A, independents a B, while Democrats an F. I think Republicans and independents really agree that inflation is an issue. Democrats are saying it's not just here in the United States, it's a global issue. We can't address it here. It's not necessarily.
Yeah, and I know from talking with our audience tonight that feels like abdication. It feels like that Democrats aren't necessarily hearing the message and coming up with the policy to match it. All right, let's move. We'll keep hearing directly from voters tonight. Right now, let's go back to Brett and Martha.
Harris, thank you so much. Let's bring in our panel again. We want to look at the state of North Carolina. Those numbers are still filtering in. Bill's going to put it up on the board. But Kellyanne, you were talking to some folks about the early vote there, not only there, but across the country,
Yes.
and what that means for Democrats.
Yes, and as we've seen everywhere, Brett, the early vote really favors Democrats. They're overperforming the early vote. And I think if you're motivated to vote against Republicans or for the Democrats, in North Carolina, you can start pretty early. It's unclear if the Democrats have cannibalized their Election Day vote. They say that Ted Budd is up about 83,000 on Election Day and should make up the difference, but this is tighter than some people expected. Chuck Schumer, I think as my friend Harold Ford Jr. mentioned, they didn't really help Beasley much at all. I think this is one that is surprising people as the night goes on, but they feel pretty good that this will tighten. I would just say that they've already called 3 House races, Greg Murphy, Dan Bishop, Patrick McHenry, in North Carolina. They're feeling good about that. Also, when I look at the counties, the 206 counties that we call the pivot counties went for President Obama and Trump took in 2016. About 6 or 7 of them were in North Carolina. I'm looking at those tonight too because those should stay solidly Republican. But we're going to have, I think, a longer night in North Carolina than some people may have anticipated.
Trey, when you look at North Carolina, your thoughts, your neighbor to the north, do you think that Ted Budd pulls this out, or you think Sherry, this is obviously she's doing a lot better than people anticipated?
You know, it makes me wonder a little bit. There were two other candidates, three candidates in the Republican primary. Pat McCrory, former governor, former mayor of Charlotte, I think, if I'm right, Carl. Mark Walker, who was a House member. President Trump weighed in very, very heavily for Ted Budd, and so did Mark Meadows. So if you're going to take credit for the victories, you may want to take a little bit of responsibility for the close ones, too.
So where that vote is important, Bill.
Yeah, it is. Vote's outstanding. What we try to do here, I mean, you see a little bit of gray, right? Obviously, those counties are outstanding. I see the margins getting tighter. We're within 2 points of each other, Beasley and Budd. If you go to the purple haze, purple rain.
I love the. Can we choose one?
Well, not yet.
Is it Prince or Jimi Hendrix?
We're going to vote. That's right. That's right, Martha. You know you're mute. We're going to vote at the end of the night, okay? Is it Prince or is it... Jimmy Hendrix, thank you.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, Trey Gowdy with the answer, by the way.
What's that?
Trey Gowdy had the answer.
The artist formerly known as Prince.
Yeah, but it's not time to vote yet, so stand by. Okay, let me take this off. Let me see what county this is. This is Davie County, all right? No votes are in. Well, what happened 2 years ago at the presidential level? Well, Trump was a big winner in that county. Picked up about 14,000 votes total raw. Here you are, 11,005. They'll do the math for me. So that's out there. Let me come back out here a moment. And let me do this. Oh, shoot, it did not work. Here, guys, let me reload it for you.
While you're reloading, Dana has a comment.
Yeah,
well,
go ahead,
just one thing that's pretty interesting about North Carolina, when Bill and I had an opportunity to talk to Ted Budd when he was in town, so he really comes across, he's a farmer. And he's kind of an understated guy, and his ads were apparently not that exciting. And Beasley she's a well-respected judge in North Carolina. One thing that's really happened in these cities, though, is the amount of people who have moved into Raleigh and Charlotte and that whole area there. That has changed that population a lot. We were talking about how many people left New England or New York for Florida and how that might have changed some things there. North Carolina, it might not happen this time around, but those pivot counties that Kellyanne mentioned in those urban areas are ones to watch in North Carolina.
Carl?
Look, it's not only where the votes are, but just remember again, this is our blue wave, red wave, blue mirage, red mirage. The votes that you're seeing here are predominantly, virtually all of the early vote is going to be the mail-in ballots because they start processing them when they come in. They announce them early. We've seen this before. Tom Tillis was behind in his races, won by a small number of several tens of thousands of votes because the late vote to come in is the vote that's being cast on election day.
Just to recue, Florida was a hold. Ohio, we're watching very closely. That's a Republican defense, Britt. Pennsylvania, also a Republican seat they're trying to hold on to, as is North Carolina.
Yeah, and I have now for you the political comment of the evening.
Okay.
And maybe of all time. Somebody's saying over on MSNBC that the GOP's dominance in Florida is all about gerrymandering.
Well, that's a pretty good trick.
So that's a story they will tell themselves to
exactly.
Incidentally, on North Carolina, just a few moments ago, the lead was 53,000. It's now down to 32,000. So as election day votes get reported here, we're likely to see this.
And it's a race that we didn't give a lot of attention to.
Right.
We did not give a lot of attention to
nationwide.
nationwide.
And the committees, and some of the committees and super PACs.
Well, except on the Republican side, they did. I mean, again, the Senate Leadership Fund, American Crossroads, that I helped fund, put like 30 some
How to get that in there. Okay, stand by.
Disclosure.
It is 9 o'clock in the East, and polls have just closed in 15 more states. We're going to begin here in battleground state of Arizona, where Democratic Senator Mark Kelly and Republican venture capitalist Blake Masters are in a very tight race.
Over to Wisconsin, incumbent Republican Senator Ron Johnson, Democratic Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, also locked in a very close race in Wisconsin.
In Colorado, also too early to call here, but incumbent Democratic Senator Michael Bennet leads at this point. Republicans believe that Joe O'Dea, who is a local business owner, an independent type, Republican, has a good chance to take that seat. We're watching.
We can project that in Iowa, Republican Senator Chuck Grassley has a solid lead in his Senate race. If Grassley wins re-election, he would become the longest-serving sitting senator.
In New York, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer will win his 5th term in office. No surprise there.
Meanwhile, in Kansas, we're projecting that GOP Senator Jerry Moran will win his 3rd term in office.
North Dakota, we can project that Republican Senator John Hoeven has the lead, but we do not have enough data yet to make that call.
And Republican Senator John Thune has won re-election in South Dakota. As we take a look at a balance of power in the Senate, we're ticking down here. Democrats with 39, Republicans with 34. Again, the majority 51. Republicans, again, holding those seats in Florida, and we're looking at Ohio, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina, but they're looking to pick up seats a number of places throughout the country.
We're going to see those numbers fill in, and then we're going to see White just that sits there for a really long time in the middle of the Senate. So let's take a look at this in New York. This has become a really closely watched race because of the crime issue in New York. The incumbent, Kathy Hochul, has a lead at this point against Lee Zeldin. I mean, there was a time not too long ago where nobody thought this was going to be even close, but he has really given her a run for her money. So we will see how this all goes, but that's where it stands at this point.
In Arizona, another high-profile contest. It's too early to call the race between Democratic Secretary of State Katie Hobbs and Republican Carrie Lake.
Let's go to Michigan, where Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer has a slight lead. That race is too close to call.
And in Wisconsin, the race between Governor Tony Evers and his opponent Tim Michels, the Republican, too early to call there. Just like in the Senate, another very tight race.
Texas, our decision desk believes that Republican Governor Greg Abbott has a lead, but that one's also too early to call.
In Kansas, Republican challenger Derek Schmidt and Democratic Governor Laura Kelly are locked in a very tight race. Democrats had a lot of hopes about Kansas.
In Minnesota, the governor's race, Democratic incumbent Tim Walz has a lead against his Republican challenger, Scott Jensen.
And in New Mexico, not enough data yet to call this race. This is a showdown between Democratic incumbent Michelle Lujan Grisham and Republican candidate Mark Ronchetti.
And to the Rocky Mountains and in Colorado, incumbent Governor Jared Polis will defeat GOP candidate Heidi Ganahl.
In South Dakota, not enough data to project the winner of the governor's race between incumbent Kristi Noem and Democratic challenger Jamie Smith, but Noem does lead at this hour.
Let's go to Iowa, where we can project that Republican incumbent Kim Reynolds will return to the governor's mansion for a 2nd term.
And in Nebraska, Republican Jim Pillen is in the lead. Again, too early to call.
Finally, in Wyoming, where there are a lot of disgruntled people, apparently, according to our Fox News voter analysis, we're projecting that Republican Governor Mark Gordon will cruise through to another term where he beats Democratic candidate Teresa Livingston.
Okay, another deep breath. Let's bring back the panel. And we welcome in back again Josh Krashauer and Jessica Tarloff. How are you?
Hi. Great.
Looking great and purple. Your thoughts on the evening?
Not so bad so far for Democrats, which is relieving thus far. Obviously, a long way to go. I've been paying attention, kind of looking for clues about how the Democratic strategy of emphasizing January 6th and abortion is going to play out versus what's going on with the economy. A little bit of results in with the Kentucky measure there about abortion, where it looks like they're going to go the same way as Kansas. But that's kind of my focal point there. I really liked what Harold Ford was talking about with Tim Ryan. When you had Jared Polis up there, who's also won his race already, looking to Democrats who can be examples for how you can run effective races in purple places, and make an appealing argument on the economy, but also be left-leaning on social issues, but not feel like pariahs.
But let me ask you this. If the House, as projected, goes to the Republicans, and the Senate's very tight, and maybe it goes to Republicans, maybe it stays the same, do you think that message is the one they're going to take away from this election?
I worry no. I think that there will be a lot of people who said, oh, well, we got this right, when in the end, you really got lucky. There is a way to thread the needle on multiple fronts. You should never be a candidate that's only talking about one thing or one or two things that, frankly, are ranking well below the other thing that people are saying that they're concerned about. I think that people may have been able to change course in the last couple of weeks and pull it off, like a Kathy Hochul, for instance, here. But if you listen to people like Elisa Slotkin, who's in a tough race in Michigan there, when she says we didn't have a cohesive economic message as a party, that's something that you take home, especially going to a presidential election when President Biden is going to have to defend his record over the 4 years.
Josh, let's take a look at Ohio again, because more numbers are coming in those races that we have talked about a lot in 2, 7, and 10. And we're seeing as we get more vote there, and maybe Bill can pull that up for us as well while we talk about it, that there's a very nice spread for Yesli Vega and also for the candidate who is running against against Luria,
You're talking about Virginia.
Jennifer Kagan.
Virginia.
Jennifer, yeah, in Virginia. Did
You
I say
said
Ohio?
Ohio.
I'm
That's
sorry.
right. He's going to
I'm sorry, Virginia.
He's got it.
Okay, so we have two really interesting races here, Spanberger and Vega, and then we have Luria and Jennifer Kagan, who, you know, the Republicans have been enormously enthusiastic about as a candidate, and she seems to be doing quite well.
Yeah, in Virginia, like these states that don't have a Senate race, that don't have a big governor's race, Republicans are doing really well. I'm seeing a mixed bag politically. Huge night for Republicans in Florida. This is a political tsunami for Governor DeSantis, for Senator Rubio. I think.
You know what, Josh, we're going to jump in because DeSantis has just come out to give his acceptance speech. Let's watch a little bit of this.
Well, thank you so much. You know, over these past 4 years, we've seen major challenges for the people of our state, for the citizens of the United States, and above all, for the cause of freedom. We saw freedom in our very way of life, and so many other jurisdictions in this country wither on the vine. Florida held the line. We chose facts over fear. We chose education over indoctrination. We chose law and order over rioting and disorder. Florida was a refuge of sanity when the world went mad. We stood as a citadel of freedom for people across this country and indeed across the world. We faced attacks. We took the hits. We weathered the storms, but we stood our ground. We did not back down. We had the conviction to guide us, and we had the courage to lead. We made promises. We made promises to the people of Florida, and we have delivered on those promises. And so today, after 4 years, the people have delivered their verdict. Freedom is here to stay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, thanks to the overwhelming support of the people of Florida, we not only won election, we have rewritten the political map. Thank you for honoring us with a win for the ages. I want to thank all of our campaign staff, from campaign manager Janera Peck down. This was the best run campaign in the history of Florida politics. I want to thank all of our wonderful volunteers who worked so hard to get out the vote. Your support means the world to Casey and I. God bless you and thank you. Now, it's a lot easier to run a good campaign when you got a great record to run on. And I would not have been able to see the level of accomplishments that we saw unless I had outstanding personnel working in the executive office of the governor, as well as heading state agencies. These folks worked hard to implement our agenda. They believed in our agenda, and the results have been historic. Thank you for your support and work. Thank you to Miami-Dade County. Thank you to Palm Beach County. Now, we're still tallying the votes, but it's clearly apparent that this election, we will have garnered a significant number of votes from people who may not have voted for me 4 years ago. And I just want to let you know, I am honored to have earned your trust and your support over these 4 years. And most important of all, thank you to the greatest First Lady in all 50 states, for being a great wife, giving unwavering support, being a tremendous mother to our 3 young children, and serving as an example for women throughout this state, especially going through the battle of cancer. She is remarkable. Now, today, today is the culmination of the 2022 fall elections, but in reality, Americans have been voting for many years now. They've been voting with their feet, and the results of that behavior has been just as stark as our landslide victory today. States and cities governed by leftist politicians have seen crime skyrocket. They've seen their taxpayers abused. They've seen medical authoritarianism imposed, and they've seen American principles discarded. The woke agenda of Americans to leave these jurisdictions for greener pastures. Now, this great exodus of Americans, for those folks, Florida, for so many of them, has served as the promised land. We have embraced freedom. We have maintained law and order. We have protected the rights of parents. We have respected our taxpayers, and we reject woke ideology. We fight the woke in the legislature. We fight the woke in the schools. We fight the woke in the corporations. We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob. Florida is where woke goes to die. People have come here because our policies work. Leadership matters. We refuse to use polls and put our finger in the wind. Leaders don't follow, they lead. We set out a vision. We executed on that vision, and we produced historic results. And the people of this state have responded in record fashion. Now, while our country flounders due to failed leadership in Washington, Florida is on the right track. I believe the survival of the American experiment requires a revival of true American principles. Florida has proved that it can be done. We offer a ray of hope that better days still lie ahead. I am proud of our achievements in this state. I am honored by your support, and I look forward to the road ahead. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race in this first term, and I have kept the faith. We've accomplished more than anybody thought possible 4 years ago, but we've got so much more to do, and I have only begun to fight. God bless you all. Thank you very much. Thank you for a historic landslide victory.
Ron DeSantis, the major winner, winning re-election for governor in Florida. Britt, do you want to weigh in about other things?
Well, I would say that he's out. He sees this as a moment. He knows what the consequences of this is politically, not just in the state of Florida, but for his own personal ambitions. And I think that's pretty well reflected. Heard him say that.
And there you see the family. It was a big part of the campaign. His wife went through a battle of cancer, and former TV broadcaster herself, and a big asset on that campaign. Ron DeSantis went in places that other Florida governors have not won as Republicans since Jeb Bush in 2002. Now, we've got some calls to make. In the first of the two Oklahoma Senate races this year, Fox News can project that GOP Senator James Lankford will win a second full term in office.
And special election, we project that Republican Markwayne Mullin will defeat Democrat Kendra Horn.
Moving to Connecticut, where Democratic Senator, the incumbent Richard Blumenthal, wins the third term by defeating Republican businesswoman Leora Levy.
Over to Texas and the governor's race, where we can now project that Governor Greg Abbott will remain in the governor's mansion for a third term. He defeats high-profile Democratic candidate Beto O'Rourke. A lot will be said.
Leave it there for 1 second.
A lot will be said about this this race, because this is multiple efforts on the part of Beto O'Rourke.
Multiple efforts and multiple tens of millions of dollars, and a lot of focus on Beto O'Rourke as a candidate. Britt?
O'Rourke is becoming the Charlie Crist of Texas.
Yes, exactly.
I'm sorry, but I don't know who you're talking about. The Democratic candidate was Robert Francis O'Rourke, and not that other phony name.
Yeah, I mean, he's gone from the cover of Vanity Fair magazine of the Democrat Party. Jessica, your thoughts on what has happened to Beto O'Rourke? Does this seal the deal? Is he done now in politics or not?
Never say never with these things, but I think if the evening goes as I expect it to for Stacey Abrams as well, that there's going to be a lot of soul searching about where you're dumping your money when you go on Act Blue, right? There are a lot of people whose races are a lot closer than you would expect, like Sherry Beasley in North Carolina. I'm not saying that she's going to end up pulling that off, but when you think about where your dollars could go, that maybe that extra money going to Maggie Hassan, it looks better than expected there in New Hampshire. Defending Nevada, things like that, giving more money in Pennsylvania, maybe to Tim Ryan, who had to go it alone without Chuck Schumer's support at the end there. And, these are celebrity candidates. I think that there have been incredible messaging moments that kind of have rallied the Democratic base and made you really focus on the issues that matter to us as a party. But they are seemingly just not great candidates to win statewide office, and I hope people will take stock of that.
Okay, we can also project that Democratic Governor Dan McKee will win the first full term in office, defeating another GOP businesswoman, Ashley Klaus.
And over to Connecticut, where Democrat incumbent Ned Lamont will defeat GOP candidate Bob Stefanowski.
And finally, in the great state of New Hampshire, we can project that Republican Governor Chris Sununu will win a fourth term. And Dana, he's been on the show with you a number of times, with you and Bill. He also possibly has other ambitions.
Well, he might. So there was a heavy attempt to recruit him to run for the Senate in New Hampshire, and he didn't want to do that. And I can understand, when he had been governor, you are the executive of your state, you're the CEO of your state. He loves New Hampshire, and he thought, why would I want to go to Washington and be one of 100 and not get anything done? He wanted to sink his teeth into things. I don't know if he actually has ambition to run for president, but of course, that decision doesn't need to be made for a little while, unless we're talking sooner than later with Britt.
Britt, but you mentioned Sununu earlier and how it plays with that Senate race and whether it affects that.
Well, it should. I mean, when you get these Republican governors winning by decisive margins, the hope, if you're a Republican, is that they will pull across the finish line some of these embattled candidates for the Senate who are in really tight races. You see that in Georgia, you see that in Florida, or not so much in Florida, but you certainly see it in New Hampshire, and you see it elsewhere. Mike DeWine, for example, in Ohio, how much can he help J.D. Vance to get across the finish line in what appears to be a pretty tight race out there?
And we'll see what happens in Arizona as well with Kari Lake and Blake Masters. Okay, let's head over to Bill Hemmer. And this is your favorite, Virginia.
Yes. Yeah, let me just pop up here a moment here. We were talking about North Carolina a moment ago. I was just checking Ted Budd is taking the lead here. But let's pop up here to the House races in Virginia. Thanks for being patient. Okay, here we go. Virginia 2, Jen Kiggins, you got about 60% of the vote. She's got a lead here of 19,000 raw votes, about 11% on the board. So she continues to, we saw this, about an hour and a half ago, she took the lead. She's maintained that lead in Virginia 2. They like that run there. Virginia 7, closer to Washington, D.C. So this is Spanberger's race with Yesli Vega. What I've seen, guys, is this race is getting closer throughout the night. We still got some vote out there right now, but Vega continues to hang on to a lead with the difference of about 6,300 there in Virginia. Can I show you a couple things in the Senate race here that I'm seeing? Let's pop down here to Georgia and watch what's happening with Warnock and Walker. Warnock, about 30 minutes ago, had gone below 50%. He popped up again. Remember, 50% in Georgia is where you need to be to avoid the runoff come 4 weeks from now. And Kemp in the governor's race, he has been pretty consistent from what I'm seeing, well above 50% now for, or really, I guess, ever since the polls closed 2 hours ago. So Kemp is running at 51.6. Walker's running at 47.1. So again, it's about that 4-point spread that you see in between Walker and between Kemp. Let me get out here.
Hey, one thing, Bill.
Yes, go ahead.
There's a Libertarian in that race, in the Senate race, that's getting 3 times the vote of the Libertarian in the governor's race in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if that factors in, but there is a difference there.
Yeah, and it could take some votes away, and we're going to see. I can't reflect that on the board behind but listen, a point could be significant, right? Can I show you what's happening in Ohio before I kick it back over there real quick? Here is Ohio. Here is Ryan and Vance. Guys, we got a race here. This is really interesting. I mean, it's a different race than what we saw about 15 minutes ago. Vote total of 23,000. Here's what I would think about. I would think about Cuyahoga County. 3-1 Democrats in that county. Ryan's got more votes out there in Cleveland, Ohio. I would think about Franklin County, Capital City, Columbus. Got a lot of votes out there, guys. You know, just about 30% in. Ryan's going to pick up a few more there. We'll see how that breaks down. And then down here in Hamilton County and Cincinnati is the east side of that county. There's a lot of votes out there, too, for Ryan in all likelihood because you're only checking in at 30%. But come back in a moment here, and I shall show you as it rolls on. Okay, you bet.
Thank you, Bill. And Virginia 10 is tight, 51-48. Jennifer Wexton over Hung Kao. Biden won that by 18% in 2020. So that's the margin in that race is something that we're watching closely to see what it indicates for the rest of these races across the country as well. Very big difference in that margin. So we're going to take a quick break, and we have Laura joining us when we come back. Laura Ingraham coming up.
And greetings to you, thrill seekers, conversationalists, and music lovers all across the bountiful and optimistic fruited plain. It's the Rush Limbaugh program here on the Excellence in Broadcasting Network.
I mean, the flag, no matter what side of the political aisle you're on, it stands for unity and freedom, liberty, perseverance. We want everyone to prosper. We want a great country. We want a nation of people pursuing excellence. We want a nation of people fulfilling their dreams and desires. You know, people call here and now, Rush, you always told us. You told us when it could be time to panic. Well, is it time to panic? Well, let me just tell you, folks, it's never going to be time to panic. Because we're never going to give up. We're not going to give up on America.
The commanding officer called you one of the best pilots he's ever seen. It must be hard being the naval aviator. It's the toughest job there is.
Based on the incredible true story.
Can't tell you how many times people have told me to give up, quit.
Of an American hero.
If I did, I wouldn't be here.
Just remember you belong down here with us too, okay?
This is war. We bring everyone home. Show off. Devotion.
That was pretty good. It's good.
In theaters, November 23rd, PG-13.
I served in the United States Army for 3 years.
I'm a retired boatswain chief, served 21 years in the United States Navy.
You should always think about our veterans and our flag.
Seeing Camp Order, you know, flying the U.S. flag.
It makes me feel honored to be working for this company.
It's quite emotional to have that show of support.
USA begins their World Cup journey. Christian Pulisic leads the United States against Gareth Bale and Wales. USA versus Wales, November 21st on Fox.
Welcome back. It's starting to get hot. Getting got a lot of data. We're getting a lot of information.
A lot of piles.
We've got a lot of people. There are two notable contests playing out in Arizona, obviously, both too early to call. On the Senate side, Democratic Senator Mark Kelly trying to fend off a challenge from Republican Blake Masters, and Republican Kari Lake is taking on Katie Hobbs for governor. Alicia Acuna joins us now from the Lake campaign headquarters. Alicia, what's the feeling there?
Hi, Brett. Well, when the polls closed, things really started to fill up here. And I can tell you, even though the polls closed in Arizona at 7 p.m. local time, 9 o'clock Eastern, everyone is waiting for the top of the hour because that's when we get that first very large set of data from Maricopa County Elections Office. That's the first data dump, as they call it. And what we're going to see there is the vote count that was the early vote that went up to this past weekend. And so whatever margins you see at that time, they're going to change significantly an hour later, because that's when we will see the today votes start to come in and really roll in, and that's when those margins will start to move around. The reason that will happen is because Arizona, like so many other states, see Democrats turn out for their early vote and participate at a pretty high rate. Republicans, you mentioned Kari Lake and Blake Masters, as part of their campaigns, they were trying to convince their voters, their base, to show up on Election Day. You saw those long lines today all over the state, and there are people who are still in line waiting to vote. Because of that, we will see a heavier presence from Republicans in terms of that vote return. So we will definitely keep you updated. I can also give you another update. The Republican Party, national, state, as well as the top of the tick candidates lost a last-minute bid this evening when they made had an emergency hearing with the Maricopa County judge to extend voting hours by another 3 hours because of glitches in the system in Maricopa County. That was denied. So expect to hear a little more from Republicans tonight as the evening goes on. Back to you.
Alicia Acuna at the Lake campaign headquarters. Alicia, thanks.
So that's a great idea to hear a little bit more about that. And Laura Ingram joins us now. Hi, Laura.
Hi, guys.
Great
Welcome.
to see you
What
tonight.
a panel. Look at this.
It's great to have you with us. You know, this Arizona race, and you said you were just listening to the arguments that were brought before the court to extend voting because of the problems that we heard about early this morning.
Yeah, 25% of the tabulation wasn't going according to plan,
That's a lot.
which is a lot of people. So the reports where people tried to go to other precincts to vote, and then they already were logged as having voted somewhere else, and so their votes didn't count. So that was not allowed by the judge to be extended as far as voting goes. But in Houston, they had other problems. In Houston, they did extend voting, so it was another set of facts. But it just brings to mind again this confusion about how votes are cast, when they're counted, when they're allowed to be postmarked. And I'm not saying I'm not in favor of federalizing elections, but every 2 years we're going to have this problem. But we didn't have this problem really up until, 2016 is when we really started having big problems.
What do you say to the Democrats who look at that and say, this is the bill? They go farther for other reasons. But is there a bill in between that says, here's a national standard that each state has to meet?
Yeah, well, we'll see how that goes. But I think Florida, I said this when I was with you guys on election night in 2020, Florida is still the model for the country, I think. The coalition of new voters, younger voters, Latino voters. We'll see where African-American voters turn out in Miami-Dade when it's really broken down. But this was a tour de force performance by Ron DeSantis and Marco Rubio. And to me, that is the great light for the Republican Party. And they know how to count votes, and they know how to tabulate absentee votes and mail-in ballots. So it can work. And it worked in 2020, and it seems to be working now for the Republicans. And the state has some certainty, which I think is so important for people's belief and trust in the system.
It's exactly right. And what happened in Florida was that they went through the hanging Chad experience and they said never again.
Right.
We're going to fix this. So they open the ballots as they come in, and then they start processing those ballots. And if you live in Florida, you can trace your ballot.
Right.
on a website. Here's where yours is. We have it. It's been counted. So why haven't they learned that lesson in places like Pennsylvania? I heard Kari Lake today said, if I'm elected, we're going to clean this thing up and we're going to make sure that it works well.
I think you're going to see new Republicans propose that, and it's incumbent upon them to do this. Again, we talk about trust in elections and belief in democracy. It's so important that people in both parties really have faith in our system. And every 2 years, we're going to have this stagger effect in the election cycle. And I don't think it's good. I really don't. And we know how to do it.
They picked up 4 House races in Florida.
Yep.
Again, Republicans need 5 to take control of the House. We'll see how the rest of the country flows. But it's looking like it could be, anywhere from 15 to 30 seats in the House. But there's a disconnect, it seems, with the Senate races that are really tight, at least as we're looking at them right now. How do you see it?
Well, I think right now I'm watching what Zeldin's going to do in New York, because there could be as many as 5 House seats that flip out on Long Island. That is fascinating. And he might win, he might not win. But if he comes within 5 points of taking it from Hochul, that is really significant. But look, in the end of this cycle, whenever we cast the last votes, it could be, a mixed bag for some of the MAGA candidates. But look, this is the process. So you have to have, run great campaigns, and it's a complex electorate with a lot of issues that are bubbling out there. But I'm telling you, Kari Lake was discounted. I was kind of for the other candidate, and she really turned out to run a great race in the end.
And we should point out, they could end up with 3 seats pick up in the Senate. It's early. And we don't know how these races are going to turn out in the end.
And again, Don Bolduc in New Hampshire, keep an eye on that. We don't know what will happen. Hassan is favored to win, but we don't know at this point. He could actually pull it out.
And as you point out, and we've been going through all of these voting rules for all of these states. There's so many states where they don't say, we're going to count the mail-in first.
Oh, it's tragic.
Then we're going to count the day of. Then we're going to go to our provisional ballots. This is the order that we do it in. So when you start getting this vote in, and I'm looking over your shoulder, Laura, and I'm seeing that things seem to be changing around in Ohio right now. That's the kind of thing that people don't. It fosters distrust in the system.
And I think also to the point that you were talking about philosophy earlier. Look, depending on what O'Day does in Colorado, if he loses by a bigger margin than some of the other more populist conservative candidates, that's something to take into account. If Mike Lee wins by a massive margin in Utah, that's a loss for Mitt Romney. So there's a divide in the party. The populists, I think, have the edge right now. But again, it's a long night ahead.
It is, and it's great to have you here.
Great to have you.
Joining us is Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel. Thanks so much for being here. Your initial impressions of tonight.
Well, I think it's going to be a long night. I think your analysis has been spot on, but I do think looking at Florida, where we were 4 years ago was in recount territory for Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis, both of them within 1%, and to see what we have seen tonight really is a seismic shift, and I think a lot of that's going to come from the Hispanic population. The RNC's had community centers in Miami-Dade for over a year. We've really engaged with the Hispanic population in Florida on top of voter registration efforts, coupled with the Florida GOP and the DeSantis team and Rick Scott and Marco Rubio. I think that's a huge, huge win. What's happening in Virginia looks really good, but we've got a long night to go. I'm very optimistic.
Ronna, what about the Senate races when you look at those tonight? What are your thoughts?
I think they're all going to be tight. We're seeing Clark County have some pretty good numbers for Republicans. We'll see if that holds. A lot of it's going to come down to Election Day vote. You look at Pennsylvania right now, all you're seeing right now is the absentee voting coming in. Democrats get a huge lead in Pennsylvania on absentee, and Republicans vote on Election Day. I was there this morning. And then Ted Budd, I think, is doing really well in North Carolina. He's going to pull that off. I think JD, we have most of the absentee in Ohio. We're getting Election Day vote now. I think he's going to come up. It's going to be a tight night, and I think Georgia, Walker's doing well. It's going back and forth, but I think we end up picking up at least 1 seat in the Senate, flipping the Senate and the House.
We talked about the New York governor's race, and we said Lee Zeldin, he's going to be the first Republican to carry Staten Island in a governor's race since 2002. It's having an effect, obviously, the issues. When you look at the issues that played well for Republicans and ones where you think you lost a little ground in some of these races, how do you see it, Ron?
Yeah, so I was in New York this week, actually, with Kevin McCarthy, campaigning for Anthony D'Esposito. George Santos and that, Long Island area, I couldn't believe how many Zeldin signs there were. And we're hearing about really strong turnout in Suffolk and Nassau, but across the state, people were telling us we need Lee Zeldin, and the crime issue is so ever present on the mind of New Yorkers. And Lee, I think he can win, but I also think he's going to help us pick up House seats. Of course, we won't have results in New York because their voting laws, again, delay results. And I think what you said about Florida tonight is spot on. The rest of the country can get this right. And for the Democrats to say that Republicans aren't getting this right on elections, look at Florida and look at Ohio, very large states that we're going to get results from tonight because they know how to run elections, and that should be the model for the country. We shouldn't be having to wait weeks to get results like we probably will in New York.
Ron, a quick answer if you can. You said Pennsylvania. Did you say that all of the vote that we've seen so far, you're saying